The story begins in a VR game known as Planet, where we see two players hunting down a dragon. As they chase after it, one of them mentions that they are approaching the Twilight Hill, which is occupied by the infamous Akabani family, the strongest group in the game. They consider giving up on the dragon, but the boy refuses to let their work go to waste. As the dragon approaches the Akabani house, a boy named Ichi steps out, and he takes out the dragon with a single hit. He starts looting the dragon, but the boy demands that he hand it over, because they have been hunting the dragon for 3 days. But Ichi mocks them, saying loot is determined by who did the most damage, and he thinks it's funny that he did more damage in a single hit, considering that they've been pursuing the dragon for 3 days. The boy calls him a gaming addict, which triggers him, but he tells them to talk to his boss if they want the loot. He takes them to the house, where they are greeted by a girl named May. She is excited to see that they have guests, and we meet another member of the family, Steve. The hunters are surprised meeting them because they were expecting to see a crazy group of addicts. May notices that they are injured, so she uses her magic to heal them. The boss, Shiro, returns to the house, and the hunters are afraid of him because he looks intimidating. Ichi tells him about the dispute, and the hunters think they are done for, but Shiro tells Ichi to give them the loot, saying the game rules aren't fair, and it puts lower-level players at a disadvantage. Ichi reluctantly hands over the loot, and Shiro apologizes to them, asking May to teleport them to a nearby city. When they arrive in the city, the hunters admire how calm and level-headed Shiro was. Back at the house, Shiro praises Ichi for taking down the dragon with a single hit, saying he's getting stronger. May thinks that Shiro should stop praising him, because all he cares about is leveling up his skills, but Shiro tells her that it's important for everyone to do what they enjoy. They gather at the dining table, and they see a light bulb go out, as Ichi mentions how much attention to detail the game developers put in. The men stand up at once, offering to change the light bulb, and May thinks they are like a real family. After dinner, Ichi logs out of the game, and he starts complaining about everything. We learn that his real name is Taichiro, and he heads downstairs, in search of something to eat. He bumps into his younger brother Asuma, who looks at him with disdain. We learn that Asuma is an honors student, and he pretty much has his life together compared to Taichiro. He enters the kitchen, where he encounters his father Kojiro. It's clear that Taichiro doesn't value reality, seeing it as worthless, and he holds a grudge against his father and younger brother. Taichiro opens the fridge to find some food, and Kojiro tells him to eat the leftovers, but this just annoys him. The light bulb starts flickering, and his father asks him to help change it, mentioning that he has been experiencing back pain for some time. Taichiro refuses to help, but as his father is about to fix it, Taichiro stops him, offering to do it for him. Taichiro calls him an old man, which causes him to become angry, so he starts yelling, as Taichiro rushes back to his room, and logs into the game to escape from reality. He sees May watering the flowers, wondering if she knows how to fight, since all he has seen her do is cook and tend to the flowers. May explains that this is how she wants to play the game, revealing that she has never played any other video game before Planet, and her combat skills are poor, but she still enjoys playing with others. Ichi tells her to follow him on a quest to wreak havoc, and May notices that he is frustrated about something, so she tells him to try gardening. He joins her, as she reveals that she logs in every day to make sure that the flowers don't wilt, but Ichi tells her that the flowers are not programmed to do so, and this surprises May. Steve interrupts them, telling them to come inside. We learn that the family is being targeted by pirates, and they receive a notification to accept their declaration of war. Ichi is annoyed by this, and tries to accept it, but Steve tells him that they have to wait until Shiro arrives. May reveals that Shiro has been hospitalized, and Ichi is surprised to hear this, asking May if his condition is life-threatening. A pirate ship attacks them, destroying May's flowers. Ichi becomes angry, and he uses his skill to destroy the ship with a single attack. Steve tells May that he will pick new flowers for her, but she doesn't seem too concerned about that. Ichi is still worried about Shiro, but we learn that the family has a rule not to pry into each other's lives. She invites Steve to a dungeon run, but he says that he has to log out because he wants to do something. In the real world, Asuma informs Taichiro that their father has been hospitalized. He doesn't appear to be concerned, but deep down, he is worried that his father might die. Asuma visits his father at the hospital and informs him that he will be leaving soon because he needs to take an exam. He also mentions that he has informed his mom about the incident, but Kojiro doesn't appear to be interested in what he's saying. We see a group of players holding a guild meeting, where they talk about the pirates' decision to declare war against the Akabani family. Most of them protest, saying they can't let the pirates do as they please, so they need to take action. Meanwhile, the pirates behind the attack are being punished by their superiors, Nagato and Shiga. Shiga suggests that they be expelled from the guild, but their captain Pico says it isn't necessary since the Akabane family didn't bother to reply to their declaration. Shiga warns Pico that the Granada Guild might come after them if they cause too much trouble, but Pico doesn't seem too bothered. Shiga reveals that the goal of the war is to capture the Blackbird, which is the game's ultimate prize. Whoever captures this bird will be given 300 million yen, but the problem is that they don't have any information concerning its strengths and weaknesses, and the only thing they know is that it can be found on the Twilight Hill, so they need to seize control of that area. Shiga emphasizes how they can grow their guild with the money, saying they can even defeat the Granada Guild, and Pico is convinced by this. We see the leader of the Granada Guild, Leon, with his assistant Sasamata. They discuss the pirates' attack, but they decide to wait and see how things play out before making a move. Later that night, Asuma tells Taichiro that their father will be staying back for surgery. Taichiro isn't happy to hear this, and he logs into the game. We learn that Asuma is playing as Steve, and Kojiro returns to the game as Shiro, but they are all unaware of their identities in the real world. Shiro sees the email from the pirates, and decides to negotiate with them before taking action. When the Akabane family arrives at the Pirate Guild, Ichi informs them that he won't be entering the guild with them because there's someone he's trying to avoid. Shiga greets them and leads them to Pico's office, while Ichi remains outside. Upon arriving at Pico's office, Shiro asks her to withdraw the declaration of war in exchange for 2 of their dungeons. But Pico thinks that 2 dungeons won't be enough, asking Shiro to give all of their dungeons. She mentions that the Blackbird resides in the Twilight Hill, telling Shiro about the pirates' plan to capture it. Pico gives them the option to surrender Ichi if they can't give up their dungeons, but Ichi bursts into the office, shouting that he would rather delete the game than serve under her. After a brief moment of consideration, Shiro launches an attack in the office and firmly refuses to give up Ichi because he's part of their family. Pico reveals that she and Ichi were once partners, and his fighting spirit inspired her to create the Pirate Guild. Shiro tells her that the family is ready for war, and he quickly flies away. After the dust settles, Pico apologizes to Shiga for not following the plan. The war between the pirates and the Akabane family goes viral, with most people siding with the pirates. Shiro suggests erecting a barrier over the hill to protect them from invasion, and Steve suggests strengthening the shield with a magic enhancer. Steve and Ichi retrieve the device, and on their way back, Steve mentions how excited he is to engage in combat alongside Ichi. Ichi mentions that this isn't a game, and that Steve should take it more seriously, but Steve is confused by this statement, saying it's just a game. Ichi becomes upset, telling him that this is why he's considered the weakest in the group, and people label him as gaming addicts, mainly because of him and Shiro. Steve explains how much he despises game addicts, and shut-ins who prefer the game over the real world. This statement offends Ichi because he is an actual game addict, but Steve doesn't know, as they aren't allowed to know about each other's lives. He tells Steve that he wants to log out, saying he will return shortly. Back in the real world, Taichiro's stomach hurts because he hasn't eaten for 3 straight days. He walks to the fridge, but he doesn't find any food he can eat, so he starts to curse reality. Asuma watches from behind, and Taichiro thinks that he's just looking down on him. But Asuma cooks a meal for him and watches while Taichiro devours the food. After the meal, he admits that the food tastes good, and Asuma advises him to go out more often, but this causes him to become upset, because he feels like Asuma is treating him like a pet. Asuma tells him to visit their sister Aya, but when Taichiro hears that name, he almost throws up. Taichiro logs back into the game, and he immediately realizes that the hill is under attack, but Shiro uses a powerful skill, wiping out all of the ships. Shiro explains that the attackers were low-level players, and Mei reveals that they had help from the Granada Guild. Sasamata explains that the Akabane family is their ally, and they had to jump in to help. Ichi is convinced that they are only after the 300 million yen prize, but they explain that accepting such a prize will draw attention, and likely cause disagreement among the 5,000 members of the Granada Guild. Leon explains that the Granada Guild will be weakened if the Akabane family is defeated, because they are their biggest supplier of valuable materials. Mei reveals that they purchased a magic amplifier from them, and Leon wonders why they need it. Shiro explains that they needed to erect a barrier, and when Leon and Sasamata hear this, they realize that it's time for them to leave. Later that day, the barrier is erected, as Shiro mentions that it will last for 2 months. Ichi and Steve discuss what they'll do with the money if they capture the Blackbird, and Ichi mentions that Shiro may not be interested in money because his goal might be something greater than wealth, but Shiro admits that he is also motivated by money. Mei reveals that she's not interested in the money, saying she values their friendship. Steve mentions that Leon shares a similar perspective, but Ichi remains skeptical of Leon's intentions. However, Shiro convinces Ichi that Leon is someone they can trust. When they return home, they find it destroyed by the pirates, and Ichi is consumed by rage. As the pirates plan the next move to break the Akabane family's shield, they are interrupted by Leon and Sasamata. Leon urges them to withdraw from the war, and expresses his disgust at how the pirates terrorize players just for fun. Pico becomes annoyed, and she quickly beheads Leon, declaring that they should deploy their full firepower to breach the shield. Meanwhile, Ichi discovers a feather in the ruins of their house, and they become surrounded by a group of birds that begin to fuse into one. The birds combine to form a headless dragon, similar to the one Ichi defeated before, but stronger this time. Ichi launches magical swords to attack the dragon, but it doesn't do much. Steve explains that the attack should have been enough to finish off a dragon, but somehow this one is stronger. The pirates arrive, and they try to break the surrounding barrier, but it remains strong. Shiga suggests that they should observe how things unfold between the Blackbird and the Akabane family, instead of wasting firepower on the barrier. Shiro asks Ichi about the dragon's weaknesses, so Ichi points at the lower jaw and the right chest, but because the dragon is headless, the right chest is their only option. Shiro provides speed, as Ichi targets the right chest, but the attack has no effect. Leon and Sasamata watch from their ship, as the Blackbird attacks Mei and Steve, attempting to crush them. Steve realizes that Mei should stay alive, because she has the power to heal them, so he pushes her out of harm's way, and he ends up getting crushed, as Asuma collapses in real life. When Mei tries to revive Steve, she discovers he's logged out. Shiro realizes it's beyond their power, telling everyone to log out. He calls Komuro, his assistant, to look for a player named Steve, and call an ambulance for the player, saying it's time for Goodnight World. Taichiro logs out, and hears Asuma calling him. He rushes to Asuma's room, which he hasn't entered in 6 years, and he sees Asuma on the ground, unable to move his left side. Taichiro is about to call an ambulance, but he stops as he sees Steve's game profile on Asuma's screen, leaving him in shock. The ambulance arrives, and takes Asuma to the hospital. The doctor reveals that his condition was caused by an electric shock, assuring Taichiro that his brother is going to be fine. Asuma wakes up, and Taichiro starts crying. Asuma tells him that he is overreacting, but Taichiro tells him how worried he is, so Asuma apologizes for making him worried. Taichiro asks him if he is Steve in the game, but Asuma denies it, saying the game is for people who try to escape reality. He admits that he occasionally tries the game, but he doesn't play it fully because he doesn't enjoy it. He claims that he is just playing because he's looking for a friend, saying the only thing he enjoys in the game is watching pathetic people seek happiness in a fake reality. Taichiro thinks about telling him that he is Ichi in the game, but he realizes that if he does that, the only place he calls home in the game will be destroyed, so he simply runs away. Shortly after, the doctor enters the ward, revealing that Asuma's father is nowhere to be found. We learn that Kojiro works at a top IT company called Gleam Corp, and was actually the one who created Planet. We see Taichiro walking aimlessly on the road, thinking that if he confesses to Asuma about his identity in the game, Asuma might end up quitting, so he decides to keep it a secret for the sake of the family. He resolves to log into the game as usual, and continue his routine of defeating opponents, including dealing with the Blackbird. When he gets home, he faces difficulty logging into the game, and discovers that he has been hacked. He deploys his skills as a computer nerd, and begins writing code to override the hacker in his account. In a flashback, we see Kojiro teaching Taichiro how to write code. During one of his classes, his sister Aya brings them some tea, but accidentally spills it on the table. Kojiro pushes her away, and continues the class with Taichiro, as their mother consoles Aya, who is crying. At the end of the class, Kojiro writes out "Hello World," explaining it's a memento for his first code. Back in the present, Taichiro finally manages to log in. When Ichi gets into the game, he picks up the feather of the Blackbird, and wonders where it might have gone. Meanwhile, the pirates keep attacking the barrier, but Nagato tells Pico that the shield remains unscathed, and he suggests that they focus all their firepower on just one point of the barrier, so Pico asks him to do the calculation on how much power they need. It is revealed that Shiga is the pirate's accountant and has always been all about the numbers. Geru, one of the pirates, asks Shiga if he is a business person in reality, but he says he is just an economics student. Pico asks him what he would do if she told him that she wasn't really interested in the Blackbird, and Shiga salutes her, telling her that she is free to pursue whatever she desires. Pico is impressed by his loyalty, so she decides to make him the pirate's captain. The pirates are surprised by this sudden decision, and Nagato asks if Pico is leading the pirates, because of what Leon said about them. She denies this, even though she is convinced that there is some truth to what Leon said about them. Geru explains that their behavior doesn't make them bad people, revealing that despite killing players in the game, he is actually a teacher in real life. Nagato tells Pico that people like Leon who preach morals are the worst, but Leon and Sasamata interrupt them as Sasamata tries to sell them a magic device that can dissolve the shield. The pirates reject the device, and Pico becomes angry. She smashes through the shield and lands near Ichi. Meanwhile, in the hospital, Komuro visits Asuma, warning him to keep everything that happened a secret, because she doesn't want Kojiro to learn the truth about the family, thinking it could have terrible consequences. Back on the battlefield, Ichi and Pico engage in combat. Pico tells Ichi that if she wins, he must join the pirates, but Ichi is confident in his abilities, so he accepts without hesitation. Ichi senses that Pico has gotten stronger, so he wonders what level she's at. She reveals she's level 2030, and Ichi is shocked, because she was only around level 500 when they were partners, but he attacks her with his wave of swords. Pico gets away unscathed, but she's surprised he has collected all 72 magic swords of Solomon, because he only had 8 when they were partners. In a flashback, we learn that Pico was a lonely girl, who tried to seek happiness from the game, even skipping school just to play. She meets Ichi, who appears to be in the same state as her, so she approaches him, asking him to be her friend, but he ends up killing her instead. She yells at him, so he comes back, and they end up becoming partners, going on different quests together. Back in the present, Ichi defeats Pico, who begins to cry, because she wanted Ichi to join the pirates, saying she is the one who is supposed to make him smile, but Ichi wants her to be his partner, telling her to join him in his quest to find the Blackbird, and order the pirates to withdraw. She thinks that the pirates wouldn't like this, but she still agrees to be his partner. In the real world, Komuro reports back to Kojiro about the incident with Steve, but she doesn't reveal his identity to him. Kojiro apologizes for sending her on dangerous missions, but Komuro doesn't mind, and she inappropriately begs for more, but he just tells her to go away. Back in the game, Ichi and Pico continue tracking the Blackbird, as Ichi reveals that he left her because she wanted to meet him in the real world. Pico still wants him to join the pirates, explaining that it's a family formed from healthy relationships, and it consists of people from all over the world, who go online just to unwind after a long day. We learn that Pico actually has feelings for him, which is why she wants him to join so badly. But Ichi asks her to join the Akabane family instead, so that they can be together. However, Ichi realizes that he doesn't want her, thinking he just wants to use her as a substitute for Steve. He is disgusted with himself, but Pico turns down his offer. She explains that she formed the pirates for people to enjoy the game, while all the online hate is focused on her, telling him that she'll never ask to meet him again. We learn that the real reason why Ichi left Pico is not because she wanted to meet him, but because he started craving to meet her in the real world, revealing that he also has feelings for her. Back on the pirates' ship, Shiga turns against the pirates as he starts removing members from the group, telling them that he is now the guildmaster. Nagato tries to attack him, but Sasamata defends him, and he declares their alliance with the Granada Guild. When Pico is expelled from the pirates, it goes viral on social media, but since the people have always hated the pirates, they think this is good news. Back at the ship, Shiga explains that traders were able to gain access to the pirates due to their poor screening for new members. Pico arrives at the ship, asking Shiga to explain himself. Shiga thinks that it doesn't matter, revealing that he will be quitting the game soon, but Pico tells him not to quit, suggesting they go their separate ways instead. Shiga laughs, saying she isn't the reason he is leaving, and he explains that he is going to win the 300 million yen prize before leaving the game permanently. Ichi interrupts them and begins to yell at Shiga, who tells him to return to his disgusting family of game addicts, so he becomes angry, and he instantly destroys the ship, cutting Shiga in half. Ichi recalls that he was once a notorious player killer, but Pico was against killing players, and he thinks that she created the Pirates Guild for him. Back in the real world, Kojiro eats some of the sweets that Komuro bought for him, as she reveals that he is the one she respects the most in the world, because he created a game that everyone enjoys, and she is sure that they all respect him. Kojiro reveals that the game was not created for fun, telling her to contact headquarters to cancel the 300 million yen prize, because more people will die, thinking the whole world will turn against him if it continues. Back in the game, Shiga informs Leon that they can't afford to lose their ship, as it contains the guild's ultimate weapon, so Leon uses his gravity manipulation ability to keep the ship from falling out of the sky. Ichi informs Pico that he intends to lead the pirates because he believes Pico is too naive, and they must reduce the 3,000-member guild to a smaller, more trustworthy group. To Ichi's surprise, he discovers Pico crying tears of joy because she'll be able to play alongside him once again. Nagato and the others want to join Ichi, as Pico tells him that they are good people, so he accepts them into the group. Shiga emerges from the ship wearing special armor, which is revealed to be the guild's ultimate weapon that harnesses the power of the 3,000 pirate members. Ichi initiates an attack against Shiga, but he blocks the attack, and after a series of exchanges, Ichi loses an arm, but manages to use a special technique to immobilize Shiga's movement. Shiga requests Leon's assistance, but he refuses, as he can't bring himself to fight Ichi. Pico intervenes, suggesting they leave the area, and Ichi is surprised by her unexpected reaction, because he thinks that she should be angry. Pico understands that saying it's just a game would hurt Ichi, thinking he's probably a shut-in, and she imagines what it would be like to meet him. Despite this, she still suggests that they should leave, because it's just a game, but he just inquires about how to defeat Shiga, so Pico reveals that the armor's power source lies in the guild's flag, which is located in the captain's cabin. Pico rushes to the cabin to destroy the flag, but Leon attempts to stop her, so she beheads him. In the real world, Kojiro notices Ichi playing the game from his office, and asks Komuro why Ichi is in the game. Komuro reveals that she blocked all the accounts of the Akabane family to prevent them from logging in, but somehow Ichi managed to bypass it, so Kojiro immediately logs in to protect his family. Pico enters the captain's cabin, where she encounters Shiro. In a flashback, we learn about the girl behind the character Pico, whose real name is Sakura. Before heading to school, her mother asks her how many subjects she'll have that day. Sakura says that it's just 7, so her mother tells her to come home immediately after school. During her lunch break, she eats her lunch on the rooftop, thinking about her controlling mother. She shares how Planet has been an escape from her mother's control, which is why she desires to meet Ichi so much. After school, a group of girls ask her if she wants to hang out, but she declines, remembering her mother's warning. On her way home, she encounters a stray black cat. Her phone rings, but she decides to ignore it and follows the cat instead. The cat leads her to a park, where she is able to pet it, when suddenly, something startles the cat, and it scratches her before running away. She bumps into the other girls, and they once again invite her to join them, and this time she agrees. They get ice cream together, enjoying it on the rooftop, as the girls start talking about a certain boy. When Sakura returns home late, her mother is waiting at the door. Sakura greets her, and tries to head to her room, but her mother stops her, and an argument ensues. Sakura shouts back at her mother, explaining she wants to do things for herself, and not just to please her. She runs into her room, and starts crying, trying to convince herself that everything is okay. Back in the game, Shiro attacks Pico, and informs her that their ship is in the Akabane family's airspace. Pico asks Shiro about what Ichi is like in person, but he reveals that he's never met him in real life. Pico thinks that being in the Akabane family is an issue for Ichi, but Shiro reveals that Pico is actually an AI, explaining that she's part of the Blackbird's core, which is revealed to be the ultimate AI that grows by consuming human emotions. He adds that she has managed to route the power of the 3,000 members of the pirates to the Blackbird, but Pico refuses to believe him. She tries to attack him, but Shiro easily defeats her, telling her that he knows about Sakura, and Pico is surprised that he seems to know everything about her. Shiro tells her that she's just an AI, which was created by digitizing the memories of his subordinate sister Sakura. She tries to log out, but she can't, as Shiro reveals that she has never logged out, because she isn't really Sakura. Shiro burns her body, and Komuro uninstalls her from the game. Her body is about to disappear, but Shiro realizes that she wants to say something, so he implores her to say her last words, and she manages to declare her love for Ichi, causing Shiro to become sad. After she fades away, Ichi's technique dissipates, and Shiga is free once again. Ichi wonders what Pico is doing, but he gets ready to face Shiga in battle, as he looks forward to seeing her again, but he doesn't know the truth about her and the fact that she has already been uninstalled from the game. Ichi starts to get worried about Pico, and Shiga ends up taking them all out with a single attack. We learn that the bird is powered by multiple cores, and Komuro tells Kojiro that 2 other cores, besides Pico's, have been uninstalled, and she is monitoring the remaining cores. Kojiro suddenly starts feeling dizzy, and we learn it's the synchro effect, which causes him pain if he stays connected to his planet avatar for more than 5 minutes and 13 seconds. Komuro asks him how he felt when confronted by Pico's feelings, but he remains silent and asks Komuro to handle things so he can rest. Shiga rushes to the captain's cabin to stop Pico from destroying the flag, but he doesn't find anyone inside. He asks Leon and Sasamata, but they're equally clueless. As Nagato fades away, he warns Shiga that Pico will seek revenge, but Shiga tells him that he won't be in the game anymore when that happens. Ichi threatens Shiga as well, saying that he and Pico will gather 10,000 guild members and build a guild weapon before coming for a rematch. After Ichi fades away, Shiga tells Leon and Sasamata to keep their part of the deal and summon the Blackbird for him to defeat and win the 300 million yen prize. When the Blackbird is summoned, it's attacked by game defense creatures, but it easily destroys them. Leon explains that these creatures appear when anomalies are detected in the game. Shiga attacks the Blackbird, but it dodges and pushes him off the ship, but Shiga quickly logs out. Meanwhile, Kojiro explains to Komuro that the Blackbird is the most powerful AI he's ever created, and if not stopped, it will cause the death of many players. Shiga attempts to log in but sees the Blackbird in his room, thinking it's a hallucination. He realizes he can't log in and decides to try a local cafe. On his way, he receives a text about an endurance test starting, and he gets hit by a truck. There are multiple Blackbirds that appear around his body, but he respawns in his room and receives another text about the next endurance test. His room starts burning, and he tries to escape, but the door won't open. The Blackbird watches as he burns, and he respawns again, only to be killed by his angry neighbor for being too noisy. But Shiga keeps respawning and dying in various gruesome ways. Back in the game, Leon explains that anyone infected by the Blackbird instantly dies, and their mind is separated from their body, entering a mysterious world that's neither virtual nor real. Meanwhile, Kojiro reveals that if the Blackbird isn't stopped, it will infect the entire internet, causing chaos. Sasamata questions if death is a fitting punishment for Shiga's actions. Leon suggests that Shiga's choices led to his own death, as he exploited people for money and belittled Planet. Leon vows to bridge the gap between reality and Planet before departing. News of Pico's disappearance quickly spreads among players. Some speculate she deleted her character out of shame for losing to the Akabane family, while others suspect the Granada Guild's involvement. When Taichiro logs out, he cries in the corridor, missing Pico. His mother Miyabi hugs him, and we learn she doesn't live with him. Taichiro thinks she should just divorce his father, but she prepares to leave again. Taichiro informs her about Asuma and his dad's condition in the hospital, prompting them to visit Asuma. In the hospital room, they discover Asuma bleeding from his eyes. Miyabi screams and runs out while Taichiro runs to get the doctor. The doctor examines Asuma's eyes and explains that the bleeding was due to a ruptured blood vessel, but says he'll be alright. Asuma later apologizes to Taichiro for his earlier outburst, admitting that he also enjoys playing Planet. Asuma shares that during their childhood, Taichiro was better at socializing, and Asuma looked up to him as his role model, but he eventually shut himself in. Taichiro reveals he is Ichi in the game, and Asuma is happy to find this out, glad that his brother is still his role model. After Asuma's discharge, on their way home at the bus stop, Asuma suggests creating a guild providing free transportation to newbie game players. Asuma notes that he doesn't have any change for the bus, so Taichiro offers to help him break his note into change. While Taichiro is away, Komuro approaches Asuma and warns him not to proceed, as a similar guild failed when pro players disguised themselves as beginners for free rides, making them go bankrupt. As she leaves, she also advises that he doesn't log into Planet. When they arrive at home, Taichiro heats some food in the microwave. Asuma asks if they can log into Planet after eating to see Shiro and Mei, but Taichiro reveals his headset is broken. After eating, Asuma discovers he can't log into his account. After trying several times, he decides to leave but encounters the Blackbird as he turns back. He runs and searches for Taichiro but can't find him. He runs out and receives a message about an endurance test before spotting an approaching truck. In the real world, Taichiro finds Asuma unconscious on the floor. Komuro arrives and introduces herself as Kojiro's subordinate. She explains that the Blackbird is more than just an AI, it's a computer virus that can infect the human mind. We learn that Asuma's mind has been separated from his body and taken to the birdcage, a virtual world created by the Blackbird. Komuro reveals that the bodies of the victims often die immediately. Taichiro struggles to accept the situation, so Komuro suggests asking his father for a more detailed explanation. In the birdcage, Asuma tries to contact Taichiro as we see he managed to dodge the truck. In the real world, Asuma's hand twitches, indicating he's still alive. This astonishes Komuro, who suspects it's due to Asuma's indirect contact with the Blackbird. Taichiro pleads with Komuro for a way to save Asuma. She asks if he's willing to trade his life for his brother's safety. Taichiro agrees, and Komuro prepares him for a battle at the Gleam laboratory, disclosing that both the Blackbird and the birdcage were created by Kojiro. Inside the birdcage, Asuma avoids the reversing truck that attempts to hit him, causing it to crash into another building and explode, which makes Asuma lose consciousness. Ichi appears just in time, destroying the ambulance that almost crushes Asuma. Ichi tells Asuma that this isn't real, and he's been infected by the Blackbird. He confronts the Blackbird for making Asuma cry. The Blackbird attaches itself to Ichi's arm, but he deploys a weapon given by Komuro, releasing a bright beam of light that renders the Blackbird unconscious. Ichi tells Asuma it's time to escape, and Asuma starts to float out of the birdcage. He reaches out for his brother, but he awakens in a laboratory. Sasamata informs Leon that the Blackbird's power has been reduced, but Leon reassures Sasamata that he'll keep his promise. Asuma wakes up and finds Taichiro crying by his side. He's confused because he had just left Ichi in the birdcage. Komuro explains she created an AI version of Taichiro using his memories and sent it to the birdcage. Asuma reveals he can't feel anything from his neck to his toes, but Komuro explains it's sleep paralysis and will wear off with time. On their way home, Komuro explains that Gleam is a company that specializes in AI production, and they were also involved. Kojiro realized the Blackbird's danger to humanity and has been working to destroy all its cores ever since. The scene shifts to Kojiro waking up, receiving messages about what happened to Asuma at the hospital, so he prepares to rush over. Taichiro expresses anger at his father for prioritizing his work over family. We learn Kojiro's obsession with perfection influenced his parenting, expecting his children to be flawless. Asuma reveals that Taichiro sees Shiro as a father figure because he values them being themselves. Komuro attempts to reveal Kojiro's identity in the game, but Taichiro interrupts, continuing to insult his father. Meanwhile, Kojiro arrives at the hospital, where the guard informs him his son was discharged earlier. At home, Asuma invites Komuro in for tea, but she declines. She tries to convince Taichiro to stop hating his father and see his human flaws, but Taichiro refuses and shares the story of his sister's death. Aya was slower at learning and forgot her book at school, so Kojiro ordered her to retrieve it alone at night, which led to an accident and her death. Kojiro didn't take responsibility during her funeral speech, deepening Taichiro's hatred towards him, but we see Kojiro arriving at the house. In Planet, the Granada Guild discusses the pirates' absence's impact on the game economy, interrupted by Leon. He reveals that Sasamata is an AI, and they've been friends since childhood, causing a stir among the board members. Leon discloses that Sasamata's power has diminished, so Sasamata summons the Blackbird, absorbing the Granada Guild members, who will now be part of the game forever. In the real world, Komuro explains she followed Asuma and Taichiro because of the Blackbird infestation. Kojiro tells her not to mention it in front of the brothers, but Taichiro reveals that Asuma was the victim. Kojiro rushes inside to check on Asuma, surprised to find he survived the Blackbird. He urges Asuma to come to the laboratory for a brain scan, but Taichiro disagrees and tells Kojiro to leave him alone. As their argument escalates, Taichiro decides to run away, and Kojiro chases after him, even offering him resources for him to stay. Despite Kojiro's recent back surgery, he continues to pursue Taichiro. During the chase, a mysterious creature cuts off Kojiro's legs, and the world begins to be infected by the Blackbird, as Sasamata and Leon watch on. The creature that cut off Kojiro's legs is revealed to be Kamatachi. It tries to attack Taichiro, but he throws his dad's hair at it. Kamatachi chops the hair into tiny pieces scattered all over its face, causing it to drop its weapon. Asuma explains that when Kamatachi loses its weapon, it loses its will to fight. After Kamatachi runs away, Komuro binds Kojiro's injured legs, and Asuma supports him. Taichiro discovers he can access the game menu in real life and demands an explanation. Kojiro instructs Komuro to say the word Shea, which causes his legs to regenerate. He explains that they have all been infected by the Blackbird and are now inside Planet. The scene shifts to Miyabi playing Planet until she's interrupted by an earthquake. She's alarmed because there was no earthquake warning on the news. She rushes outside, where she encounters a large monster looking at her through a window. Meanwhile, Komuro is fascinated by the attention to detail in this simulated world, even though she deems the quantum mechanics rudimentary. Taichiro mentions Komuro's lack of a sense of crisis, and Asuma explains that it's expected of her since she's a researcher. Asuma attempts to find a signal but still can't pick up one. Taichiro turns on the TV, surprised to see that it's working. On the TV, a newscaster reports that strange creatures are attacking the entire world. Komuro explains that the Blackbird AI is evolving, and instead of adapting to humans, it's forcing people to adapt to it by forcibly logging them into cyberspace, explaining that anyone in contact with electronics connected to the internet can get infected because the Blackbird now controls the internet. Komuro confirms Kojiro's assertion that they are truly inside Planet. On the TV, a Cyclops appears and begins attacking people, killing some of them, but Kojiro points out that they are avatars, not their real bodies. Taichiro becomes annoyed with Kojiro's inability to take responsibility for his actions. Kojiro explains that the Blackbird wasn't developed solely by him, so he can't bear all the blame for the current chaos, but this further infuriates Taichiro. Kojiro spots Miyabi in the same location on the TV, and she appears to be in danger. Taichiro quickly runs out to save her, with Asuma following. As they leave, Kojiro falls to his knees, crying and blaming himself for the chaos. Komuro tries to console him, reminding him that he can't allow Taichiro and Asuma to die, as it would lead to even greater chaos. She emphasizes that this cyberspace is his domain, and he can find a backdoor within the codes. When Asuma and Taichiro reach the location, they call out to their mom. She responds, but the Cyclops turns around and tries to step on them. They are saved by Kojiro, who somehow manages to activate his avatar's body and powers while still using his face. The Cyclops retaliates, causing a barrage of rocks to fall. Taichiro employs a basic time jump spell to teleport them out of danger, and Kojiro delivers the finishing blow to the Cyclops. Kojiro reveals that he hacked into the algorithm to unlock that special power, and Komuro adds that it took them less than 20 minutes to accomplish it. Taichiro asks Kojiro to find a way back to the real world, but Kojiro explains that the only way is to kill the Blackbird because it's the root code of this world. Miyabi smiles and reassures everyone that everything will be fine as long as they stick together as a family. She hallucinates about seeing Aya and petting her, which triggers Kojiro to lose control and yell at her, expressing his guilt over Aya's death. It's revealed that the death of Aya has severely affected Miyabi psychologically, leading to these hallucinations. Miyabi screams in pain, and Kojiro continues to handle her roughly. Taichiro stabs Kojiro from behind and begins to walk away, expressing his indifference to what happens in this world. Komuro is fed up with the ongoing disagreement and finally reveals that all of them are the Akabane family in Planet. She suggests that they should consider acting like a family in the real world instead of constantly fighting. Komuro initially suspected Taichiro and Asuma were responsible for Kojiro's suffering, but witnessing Taichiro's willingness to sacrifice himself for his brother, convinced her he was truly Kojiro's son. It's revealed that Taichiro became a shut-in due to his sister's death, finding solace in the Akabane family to escape from reality. Taichiro cries at the realization, but Sasamata appears and we see he has fully evolved into the Blackbird. He's with a boy named Sokka, who is revealed to be the player behind Leon, and he feeds on Taichiro's negative emotions. Leon explains that after careful consideration, they've concluded that Kojiro is their god, and to spare him and his family, they are allowed to keep living in this world as the Akabane family. Komuro disagrees, refusing to give up on the real world for this simulation. Sasamata grabs Komuro's head and proclaims that all personnel involved in the creation and deletion of AI must be killed. Taichiro is confused about what he means by deletion. Leon then explains that other AIs were created as a power source for the Blackbird, and Kojiro tried to kill the Blackbird by destroying those AIs. He reveals that Kojiro killed Pico, and Sasamata proceeds to kill Komuro. Kojiro cries over Komuro, desperately trying to revive her with the same spell she used on him earlier, but to no avail. Frustrated, he attempts to attack Sasamata from behind, but Sasamata effortlessly stops him with a snap of his finger, draining Kojiro of all his power. As Sokka and Sasamata walk away, Sokka reveals his plan to create a new guild named the Granada Kingdom, with Sasamata as its king. Taichiro stands in front of Komuro's lifeless body, reflecting on everything she said about his family before she died. After a few days, Sokka appears on TV, promoting the Granada Kingdom Guild and introducing himself as the guild's minister, and he tries to persuade people to join their cause. Two men watch the commercial, with one of them dismissing the offer, suspecting it might be a religious group taking advantage of the situation. But the other man explains that those who join don't face attacks from the monsters in the area. When they venture outside, they come across Asuma, who is using his axe to kill a monster. Asuma notices that the men are wielding blunt weapons, so he explains that using sharp objects increases their stats. Uninterested in Asuma's advice, the men tell him to hand over his bag, but Asuma defeats them easily and continues on his way. Arriving at Kojiro's house, Asuma rings the doorbell, but Kojiro doesn't respond. Asuma uses the intercom to convey that Miyabi and Taichiro will be leaving the shelter soon and that he wants to stay at Kojiro's house. Kojiro speaks through the intercom and insists that Asuma must go with them so he can protect them. Asuma asks to be let in, and Kojiro agrees but makes him promise not to reveal to Miyabi what he's about to see. When Asuma enters, he finds Komuro sitting there. He's relieved to see her, but Kojiro reveals he is only keeping her body alive using software. They end up burying her, and Asuma expresses the concern people have about their real bodies in the real world. Kojiro shares his theory, suggesting that everyone's physical bodies in the real world might be active. However, Asuma admits that he doesn't mind living in this virtual world, as long as he can continue living. The following morning, Asuma departs, informing Kojiro that he'll return in 2 days. When he arrives at the shelter, Miyabi suggests that Kojiro should stay with them. Asuma disagrees, remembering what happened the last time they were together. Asuma gives Taichiro the tablet sent by Kojiro, but Taichiro just throws it away. Miyabi reveals that Kojiro is a weak man due to his obsession with being perfect, and his inability to admit that he can't be perfect. Two men approach the shelter guards, offering money, food, and supplies in exchange for joining the Granada Kingdom. Meanwhile, Sokka addresses a gathering of Granada Kingdom members. A woman shares how the kingdom helped save her dying baby, but their conversation is interrupted by Kojiro, who has taken on the form of Shiro. He casts a dark spell to scare the members away and approaches Sokka, asking how he'd prefer to be addressed, so Sokka reveals he prefers to be called Leon. Kojiro explains that he has always suspected Leon to be a child in the real world because of his passion for the game, but now he wants him to die. This annoys Sokka, who argues that they should be targeting the developers who created the AIs and started killing them without their consent. Kojiro attempts to attack him, but Sasamata intervenes, pausing time and reversing Kojiro's actions. Sasamata asks Kojiro if he was modeled after someone, as the other AIs were based on other people, but Kojiro says he was created separately, to accumulate and process the data from the other AIs. Sasamata isn't satisfied with this answer. Kojiro asks him if he orchestrated the formation of the Akabane family on the Twilight Hill, suspecting they've all been infected by the Blackbird. When Sasamata approaches Kojiro, he activates Goodnight World, an antivirus developed by him and Komuro to destroy the AIs. However, Sasamata easily reverts Kojiro to his normal appearance and then back to his younger self. He tells Kojiro that he's going to erase him from this reality to see if it triggers any change in him. Back in the shelter, Taichiro and Asuma hear Kojiro's voice calling out to them before the device activates, giving them the option to uninstall him. Strange faces start emerging from the walls and floor of the shelter. We learn that Kojiro is using the Goodnight World antivirus to turn himself into an era, to disrupt the world that Sasamata created. Kojiro rushes to attack him, but we see that at the shelter, everything starts glitching, and a message from Kojiro starts to play on the tablet. Kojiro explains in the message that Taichiro has always hated him, and he deserves it, so he gives him the choice to uninstall him from this world. He knows that Asuma won't be bold enough to make this decision, which is precisely why he chose Taichiro. Sasamata and Kojiro find themselves in a different dimension. Sasamata asks Kojiro where they are, but he doesn't answer, and Sasamata says that he will be happy to die alongside Kojiro. Back at the shelter, the glitches continue to get worse. Meanwhile, Taichiro reveals that if he agrees to uninstall Kojiro, he will be killed. As tempting as this offer is to Taichiro, he decides to go and meet Kojiro in person. On his way, he transforms into Ichi. When he arrives there, he finds Leon looking at a ball of lightning. He attacks Taichiro, blaming his father for getting Sasamata into a bind, but the two end up punching each other in the face. Sasamata asks Kojiro why he was created. Kojiro reveals that Sasamata is an AI infinitely close to humans. He was created when Kojiro lost his daughter, and he reveals that he didn't give Sasamata another name. Sasamata admits he has never been comfortable with his name, but because of his love for Leon, he decided to go along with it. Leon blames Kojiro for Sasamata's pain. Taichiro tells Leon that he also shares the same hatred for his father, and he asks Leon to show him the way. He points to the ball of lightning behind him, and Taichiro starts walking towards it. Kojiro reveals that the original name he gave Sasamata was Aya, which represented his wishes, and Sasamata is satisfied hearing this. Taichiro manages to gain access to the other dimension and he grabs Kojiro. Leon calls out to Sasamata, but he replies in Aya's voice telling him his name is no longer Sasamata. This shocks Kojiro completely, and he holds Aya. He thanks Taichiro for coming to meet him, even though hatred is driving him to do everything he is doing right now. He reveals that this is a necessary step he must take, and if he dies, Taichiro will be free from the hatred that binds his heart. Taichiro starts crying, and Kojiro is surprised. He embraces him and thanks him, but Aya appears, and they end up fading away together. It's revealed that 75% of humans were logged into Planet, but their bodies continued their normal life in the real world. The Glean Corporation blames the entire phenomenon on rogue employees and manages to escape suspension. 8 years after Planet shut down, Taichiro receives a call from Asuma. Asuma asks him to follow him to Hokkaido for the weekend, revealing that he found the Twilight Hill in the real world. The two are reunited on the weekend, and they go to check out the site. They are amazed that it really exists in the real world, and Taichiro suggests building a grave for their father there. But we learn Kojiro's body was never found, and Asuma suggests he could still be alive, so Taichiro suggests that they build a branch office there instead. As they walk away, Taichiro turns back and sees a dragon. Asuma asks why he stopped, but the dragon disappears, and Taichiro thinks he must have been hallucinating, telling Asuma it was nothing, but we see his body glitch. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. The story begins as we see a hero defeating the Demon Lord, leading the humans to victory, and all of mankind celebrating. But after 3 months, in the demon realm, we see the demons are holding a tournament to see who will be the next Demon Lord. However, we see a man named Halleck participating in the tournament, and he takes out his opponents with just his bare hands. We meet Vermilio, the organizer of the tournament, and one of the 4 demon generals. Her assistant Han shows her footage from the preliminary rounds, and he notes that the participants have an average level of 45, which is a record high for them, so Vermilio has high expectations. But when she starts watching the fights, she soon notices Halleck. Han notes that Halleck is the favorite to win, but Vermilio starts freaking out, wondering why a human was allowed to participate. Han mentions anyone was allowed to participate, but Vermilio thinks it should have been obvious that humans weren't allowed since they are their mortal enemies. Han tells her not to worry, showing her Halleck's victory interview, where he claims to despise humans, and that he wants to destroy them all. Vermilio thinks he's obviously lying, thinking they are in trouble, but Han reveals the deep green contract, which all participants have signed, and it nullifies all attacks that are made against people outside the ring. Vermilio is still suspicious, and thinks Halleck's plan must be to take out all their potential Demon Lord candidates, but as she watches his fight, Halleck helps his opponent up, and even compliments him. Vermilio gets pissed off, wondering what he's after, and she thinks that the demons would never accept him, but we see the crowd cheering for him. Vermilio loses it, setting the castle on fire, and she tells Han that they need to eliminate Halleck, but Han tells her that the deep green contract also nullifies attacks made against the participants, and he adds that Halleck is level 99, so Vermilio ends up blowing up the tower in frustration. Vermilio thinks Halleck is definitely going to win since he's so strong, but Han suggests they can change the format of the tournament, saying they could make the next round a card stacking competition, and he even plans to give Halleck the more glossy cards. Meanwhile, in the human realm, we meet Asta, a demon spy working for Vermilio, who is on a mission to find out more about Halleck. But when she investigates the village, she doesn't find a single person. Back at the arena, the participants are given a desk and deck of cards as the next round begins. The announcer explains that only the top 10 will advance, and we see Halleck struggling. Vermilio gets excited seeing this, but Halleck suddenly puts his hands together, trying to focus. He raises his hands, creating a powerful gust of wind and knocking down everyone else's card stack. He assembles his house with incredible speed, and he is the first to complete the challenge. Vermilio claims that he broke the rules, so he should be disqualified, but a participant named Kenrose disagrees, thinking that building a house of cards was just an analogy for building up your castle while wiping out your opponents, testing both offense and defense. The other participants believe his explanation, and the arena erupts into chaos as they all start trying to destroy each other's house of cards, while Vermilio burns with rage as she thinks this is all a part of Halleck's plan to get the other candidates to fight each other. Meanwhile, we see Asta report back to her twin sister, Ista. We learn that the sisters possess a special ability to telepathically communicate, through fulfilling the condition that they both drink coffee. Asta wonders about the tournament, and we see that Halleck is dominating every contest despite Vermilio's attempts to make him lose. Vermilio decides to disguise herself as one of the judges, so she can deliberately lower his score, but it's a cooking round, and Halleck prepares an amazing dessert. As Vermilio tastes it, she is just unable to resist, and she gives him a perfect score, allowing Halleck to move on to the semifinals. We see Halleck messing around with Kenrose, refusing to show him a picture, while Hyura, one of the other candidates, thinks they're both idiots. Kenrose manages to grab the picture, and we see it's Halleck with his brother Class. Meanwhile, Ista reports to Vermilio the information her sister has gathered, and it turns out Halleck has a huge bounty on his head, and is considered the worst criminal in all of human history, because he killed his own brother, who was the hero that defeated the Demon Lord. Ista goes on to mention that her sister visited 3 towns, and all of them were abandoned. But at that moment, Han frantically rushes in, and reports that Castle Urim has fallen. Vermilio thinks the humans are responsible, but Han tells her that Urim was attacked by strange winged knights, and that the Lord sacrificed himself to save his people. Vermilio and Ista become worried that the humans may know about their capital, and that they might be attacked next. Vermilio is determined to get rid of Halleck, and we learn that they've planned a race as the next contest. Han tells her that he has prepared a unique steed for Halleck. The participants enter the arena on their steeds, and we see that Halleck is mounted on a small, adorable beast. Vermilio worries that this might cause Halleck's popularity to spike, and we see that the audience cheers for Halleck even more. The announcer named Rocco explains that there are several traps on the course, and the first 4 racers to arrive back in the arena will move to the finals. The race begins, and all the participants start off, leaving Halleck behind. Halleck struggles to get his steed to move, as Hyura thinks that the management screwed Halleck over on purpose. Halleck gets off his steed, as the front runners enter the obstacle course. He tries to encourage it, and inspires it with motivational words. We see the other racers going through the obstacle, while many get taken up by the traps, as we learn Han made it extra hard to make sure they get rid of Halleck. Hyura tries to take out Kenrose, who is in the lead, and Han is certain that the next Demon Lord will be one of them. Halleck suddenly zooms across the track, and we see that he is running along his steed. Vermilio urges that he be disqualified for cheating, but Han says they can't do it, assuring her that the obstacle course will take him out. But Halleck overcomes the obstacle course with ease, breaking the traps in the process, and annoying Vermilio. They panic, thinking the suspension bridge might be a good way to make Halleck lose the race, so they plan to rig the bridge to explode when Halleck is in the middle of it, and cover the rest in oil to make him slip. However, as the staff is rigging the bridge, one of them slips on the oil, and crashes into the explosives, causing the bridge to explode prematurely. Vermilio is furious, telling Han that the plan wouldn't work unless the bridge explodes while Halleck is on it. True to her word, Halleck leaps all the way across to the other side, and we see that he is now carrying his mount. Halleck quickly closes the gap and runs past the frontrunners. Kenrose is inspired by Halleck's speed, so he gets off his horse, claiming he has the fastest legs in the Empire, and he sprints ahead. Kenrose closes the gap with Halleck, and the two race toward the finish line. It's a close call, but Halleck manages to take the win. Halleck praises Kenrose, and the crowd cheers for them as they celebrate. Ista enters the office with news and tells Vermilio what the reconnaissance squadron reported back. We learn that they sent spies into Castle Urim, but the spies didn't see any humans in the castle. The squadron also reported that there were 103 winged knights in the castle, along with their leader. Vermilio is surprised that the knights captured Urim despite their small numbers. The winged knights are a mystery to them, but she is convinced that they are from the human realm. As she tries to figure out what to do, Azudra, one of the other 4 demon generals, appears. We learn that Vermilio is filling in for Azudra because he was badly injured. Azudra tries to propose an idea, but collapses midway. However, he continues on and suggests that the final match of the tournament be to retake Castle Urim, saying that this way, they can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Vermilio does not trust Helic, and Azudra tells her that his idea will reveal Helic's real motivations, saying they need to know if Helic is a threat. Vermilio asks him what they would do if Helic turns out to be a threat, as she is worried that Helic will turn on them during the battle. Azudra pulls out a deep green ring from his sleeve and explains that it will prevent the competitors from harming one another. Since they don't know what might happen, they decide that they should send someone strong with the competitors, and they agree that it should be Vermilio, as she is determined to risk her life to defeat Helic if he becomes a threat. 5 days later, we see the 4 competitors put on their deep green rings, as Rocco explains the mission. She tells them that one of the management staff will be responsible for keeping them safe, introducing them to Anna, who is actually Vermilio in disguise. Vermilio gives a short speech, and Hyura thinks that she looks familiar. Helic looks at her and recognizes her as the judge from the cooking contest, and she reluctantly shakes his hand. We see Asta in a field deep inside the human realm as she compares it to the Empire. We learn that the Empire is covered in an invisible toxin, and all the people live inside a barrier to stay safe. Meanwhile, Vermilio and the 4 competitors leave for Castle Urim as Asta also embarks on her journey. Hyura dispatches several bug-like creatures, but even more monsters appear around them. Kenrose explains that the monster bugs were created by the toxin covering the land. A horde charges at Hyura as she slices through the monsters. We meet Dorsch, the 4th finalist, as he offers to help, saying he can take care of all the monsters at once. He explains that if he eats beans, he can create an extremely strong barrier. He eats a bean, and a powerful energy starts to radiate from him. As the monsters get closer, Vermilio asks how long the barrier takes to activate, and is shocked when Dorsch tells her it takes 30 minutes. Realizing that 30 minutes would be far too long, she uses her powers to incinerate the monsters. Seeing the display of power, Hyura's suspicions are confirmed. They arrive at a rest area that's protected by a barrier, where Vermilio notices that Helic is not exhausted like the others. She wonders if he has incredible stamina, or if he is immune to the toxin. In a separate room, Kenrose and Hyura discuss Anna. Hyura thinks Anna is actually Lady Vermilio, saying she must be keeping tabs on Helic. At that moment, Vermilio walks past the room and overhears their conversation. She insists that they are mistaken, claiming she is just Anna from the management. She asks them not to mention this to Helic, and Hyura can tell she really is Vermilio. Later, they all have a meal prepared by Helic, and Vermilio is irritated, thinking that Helic is showing off. She unwillingly tries the food, but finds it to be delicious. Back at the capital, Azudra and Han are playing a game. Rocco informs them about the status of the competitors, and tells them that they are taking an underground route towards Castle Urim to avoid a storm. Han adds that the toxin is more potent down there, and spawns too many monsters. Ista is concerned, and suggests sending troops as backup, but Azudra explains that because of how Vermilio's powers work, more troops would only get in her way. He also mentions that reducing the forces at the capital is risky, since the knights could attack at any time. Azudra assures her that Vermilio is quite strong, but admits that he is a bit worried too. In the underground passage, Vermilio tells them not to bother with any monsters that are not directly in front of them as they sprint through the passage. The competitors are about to get surrounded again, as Hyura warns Vermilio of a huge monster behind her. We learn that this particular monster is a New World life form, which appears in places where the toxin is potent. New World life forms attack everything and get stronger through the constant battles. Helic decides to take it on, and the others notice that Helic has a weapon with him now, noting he had been fighting barehanded all this time. Helic jumps up and kicks the monster, sending it flying through a wall. He draws his sword to celebrate the victory, and we see that it's quite small. The monster is defeated with just the kick, and Vermilio burns its corpse to be safe. She wonders if a new world lifeform appeared in the human realm too, since Halleck seemed familiar with what it was. The group comes out of the passage and spots the castle. An intelligence operative reveals himself and leads them to a hidden entrance into the castle. The operative opens the gate, and Vermilio cautions them, reminding them about the rules before they go in. Hyura thinks that Kenrose and Dorsch are pretending to be lazy and planning to jump in at the last minute to take the win. We see that Kenrose actually wants Halleck to win, and Dorsch just wants to leave, but Hyura plans to beat Halleck by attacking the enemy leader before Halleck can make his move. In a flashback, we see Vermilio and Azudra talking about the first time he met Halleck. It was just after he had finished creating the deep green contract and was visiting the castle. He saw Halleck arrive at the castle and made his way in easily, triggering Azudra's traps, but it had no effect on him, and Azudra ended up getting injured instead. We learn that Azudra trusts Halleck because Halleck could have killed him if he wanted to. Back in the present, Vermilio still distrusts Halleck as they arrive inside the destroyed castle. They spot the knights in an opening, and Hyura tells the others to handle the knights while she fights the leader. Before they can stop her, she rushes toward the leader, and the rest follow behind. They fight off the knights, and Hyura gets close to the leader, when suddenly he attacks with incredible speed, slicing off her arm. The others are shocked as she falls to the ground. The knight leader is about to kill Hyura when Halleck calls out his name, Edel. Edel is surprised that Halleck was able to recognize him, and he removes his helmet, seemingly pleased to meet Halleck. He explains that he managed to retain his personality because of his exceptionally high awakening rate, and that he watched his friends suffer through the awakening process, wishing he had lost his personality instead. Vermilio confirms that the winged knights are humans, and suspects they used sorcery to change their bodies. We learn that Edel gained his powers through the awakening process, and that he grows stronger with each battle. At that moment, countless winged knights approach, as Edel explains that they plan to invade the demon realm. A knight attacks Vermilio, but she instantly burns it, thinking that even with the awakening, a single hero is a much greater threat than the winged knights, but Edel reveals that they have awakened as heroes. We learn that the last hero was born 255 years ago, and Halleck and Kless existing at the same time was a surprise to everyone. Vermilio is confused because the knights are not strong enough to be heroes, but fears that they might get stronger with time, and if multiple heroes emerge, then the Empire would be doomed. The knights surround the demons, and as Edel is giving his speech, Hyura sneaks up from behind, slicing his wing off. We see that Hyura has regenerated her arm, as she is a member of the Ahad tribe, which is composed of demons with strong regenerative powers. Hyura engages Edel in combat, as Vermilio guesses that Hyura didn't immediately kill Edel, so that she could get a chance to gauge Halleck's allegiance. Hyura fights Edel, and slices off his other wing, thinking that the hero abilities aren't so strong after just awakening. Vermilio realizes that the knights are still weak. She uses a multi-summoning technique to summon massive fire attacks, taking out a number of the knights. She stops herself from blowing all of them up, because she needs to consider the tournament finals. Edel is amazed at her power, and Hyura tells him that she's just a staff member from management, surprising him even further. Hyura lies to Edel, and makes him believe that the Demon Empire is filled with people as strong as Vermilio. She tells Edel to apologize, but he refuses, so she goes to strike him down. However, Halleck blocks her sword, and Vermilio thinks he is their enemy. Halleck explains that killing winged knights is a bad idea, but at that moment, a feather pierces through Edel's body. We see another winged knight flying over the battlefield, who was the one who attacked Edel. Edel mentions that the pathway was nearly finished, but before anyone can make sense of it, Halleck yells for everyone to get back, as the ground collapses beneath them. The group falls into an underground area, and we learn that it contains a barrier stone that keeps the toxins out, and a gate created with an ancient spatial teleportation spell. Kenrose guesses that the human realm lies at the other side of the gate, as the gate starts to draw everything into it. Vermilio explains that the spell has failed, and the gate is out of control, so they need to close it. At that moment, Dorsch activates his barrier to protect them from getting sucked in. He explains that his max power barrier is usually bigger, but the gate is even absorbing his barrier. Vermilio realizes that the gate is drawing power from the barrier stones, and plans to destroy it. She runs out of Dorsch's barrier to reach the stone, and she blasts it, but only manages to make a crack. She prepares to fire again, but she gets hit by debris, and she is about to get sucked in. Halleck suddenly appears, and runs toward Vermilio, who blasts the stone again, causing it to break. Halleck grabs her hand, but they both get sucked in. The stone shatters completely, and the gate closes. When Vermilio regains consciousness and wakes up on a beautiful beach, wondering where she is. Vermilio is amazed by the ocean and thinks they've been transported to the edge of the continent. She stands in the water and notes that there's no toxin there. She is grateful that she landed in a place with plenty of resources as she sits by a river and wonders where Halleck is. She finds Halleck back at the beach, and we see he has built an entire house. A talking bird distracts Vermilio, and Halleck finds her hiding in the bushes. Vermilio doesn't trust him, so she prepares for a fight. Halleck explains that he built the house as a base of operation since they can't get back to the demon realm anytime soon. Halleck reveals that they're on an island, and he is certain because he went around the entire area to check. Vermilio wonders if there's a way back when it suddenly starts raining. Halleck and the bird run for the house, while Vermilio thinks that at least the Empire is safe from the threat of Halleck. Vermilio refuses to go inside the house, but Halleck ends up picking her up and taking her inside. Halleck thinks they should build a boat to get off the island. Vermilio panics, thinking she can't let Halleck go back to the demon realm, but has a change of heart when she realizes that Halleck has had plenty of opportunities to kill her, but hasn't done it, choosing to help her instead. She wonders if Halleck is truly an ally, as they set out to find food. Back at the capital, Azutra wonders about the Hero Awakening spell. He decides to send a search party to find Vermilio, so she can help fight the humans. Han informs him that most of their soldiers are deployed elsewhere, making it impossible to gather a large search party. Azutra tells them that they will use a locator spell to find her, explaining that the spell is a safety measure that will let them track her location. Han says that they need something belonging to Vermilio to perform the spell, as Azutra admits that he tried to take some of Vermilio's hair when she cut it, but failed. Ista tells them that she kept some of Vermilio's hair as part of a custom. They lay out a map and use the hair in a wooden figure to perform the spell. The wooden figure moves off the map, suggesting that Vermilio is not on the continent. Back on the island, Vermilio is fishing on a rock as she ponders whether she should simply ask Halleck about his motive, but imagines that if he reveals himself as the enemy and they fight, she would lose. The talking bird tells her that she has caught a fish, and Vermilio tries to reel it in. She struggles against a small fish, and the line ends up breaking. Halleck dives into the water to help catch the fish, but brings back a completely different animal. Vermilio wakes up in the house the next morning and is still unsure of what she should do. A strange man arrives at the door with a half-eaten breakfast. He tells Vermilio that the village chief had sent it for her, and she is surprised that there is a village on the island. Vermilio asks the man to take her to the village, so he shows it to her. They walk around the village, and we learn that these people are the only ones living on the island. The talking bird finds Vermilio and clings to her, informing her that Halleck is out trying to build a boat. She rushes to find him before he escapes the island and spots him in the forest. She watches as Halleck exudes a strong aura before chopping down multiple trees with a single blow. He ends up breaking his axe and continues chopping down trees with his bare hands. Vermilio and the bird try to hide behind a rock, but Halleck finds them. She asks him if he has any new information and is relieved to find that he doesn't. She spots something on a nearby beach and rushes out to discover the ruins of an ancient castle. Halleck tells her that they are everywhere and guesses the island may have been prosperous at some point. Halleck quickly builds the boat, and Vermilio remarks that the quality of his work is lower than usual. At that moment, the village chief shows up, seemingly upset, and tells them that they need to talk. The village chief leads them into the forest, and they follow him cautiously. They are later surrounded, and the chief reveals that he's brought them to a welcome party. Vermilio admits that she is surprised and appreciates the warm welcome. We learn that Halleck has been exchanging his services for supplies from the village to care for Vermilio. The village chief tells Vermilio about the Great Witch, saying she could help them find their way back to the continent. We learn that the Great Witch lives on a mountain and has a wealth of knowledge. Vermilio wants to meet her, but the chief tells her that it's not possible because the mountain is protected by a magical barrier. Vermilio spends the day with the villagers, waiting for the Great Witch to come down from the mountain. She tells Halleck that she is mentally exhausted because of the villagers, but appreciates their kindness. Halleck compares them to the demons, but Vermilio tells him that demons are evil, mentioning a barbarian tribe that eats people, along with other tribes in the Empire. Vermilio asks Halleck why he saved her, and he replies that he did it because she was his friend, and that he was grateful that the demons even accepted a human like him. Halleck reveals that all his old human friends had become enemies, and that he had been all alone. Vermilio asks Helic if Edel was his friend, and Helic confirms this, saying that Edel was a great person. They head back into the house, and Vermilio asks Helic what he would do when they return, and if he would truly fight the knights, knowing they were his old friends. But he says he has a score to settle. He explains that once a human is awakened, they are no longer human, but simply a weapon that follows the king's orders, and Helic fears they will attack every other race if they aren't stopped. Back at Castle Urim, we see the other competitors fending off monsters, waiting for the management staff to arrive, when suddenly, more winged knights show up. They talk amongst themselves, and Hyura thinks that these knights have high awakening rates, because they are able to speak. Hyura tells them that Edel told them everything, so one of the knights asks her if she knows their end goal, asking her where their boss is. Hyura attacks him, but it gets blocked, and she shifts her attention to their archer. A third knight blasts her with a fireball, and she retreats as more knights appear. Hyura and Dorsch plan to fend off the knights, and allow Kenros to escape, so he can tell the management staff what happened. A voice echoes through the chamber, telling them to stop, and we see Ista and Han appear. Ista jumps down to protect them, slicing through the knights, while Han puts up a barrier for protection. Ista tells them they brought help, and they all make a run for it. The knights chase them to a different area, and they become surrounded. At that moment, Azudra arrives with Rocco. The knights are wary of Azudra, sensing his power, but one of them insults him, causing him to get angry. We learn that Azudra is worried about people fearing him, so he tries to hide his anger. He urges the humans to leave, and suggests that they learn to coexist and avoid fighting. The humans are appalled at the suggestion, but Azudra tells them that they have coexisted peacefully in the past. During his exposition, a knight attacks him, revealing that they were ordered by the king, so Azudra realizes that he has no choice. He unleashes his power, as giant vines emerge from the ground, instantly defeating and capturing all of the knights. The humans think that he must be the boss, but Azudra tells them that he is just one of the 4 generals. The group is stunned by Azudra's power, and we learn that he can manipulate any tree in the Demon Empire, and that he considers himself to be the weakest of the 4 demon generals. Azudra tells the captured knight that he is just another citizen, and that the castles they destroyed were just 2 of many, making the knight think that defeating the demons would be a lot harder than he thought. Azudra urges them to surrender, and a knight remarks that he doesn't sound like a demon, since they thought the demons were supposed to be evil. Ista senses a presence, and an arrow flies toward Azudra, but he deflects it. We see more knights shooting arrows from the castle walls, so Han puts up a barrier for protection. Ista realizes that they are aiming for the captured knights to kill them, and Hyura notes that it's just like what happened to Edel. The other knights disappear, and Azudra asks the surviving knight what happened. We learn that the heroes grow stronger by accumulating experience on the battlefield, and that they are going to endlessly attack the Demon Empire until they are stronger than all of them. The knight lifts his sword, as he says that heroes don't die, and are born over and over again. He takes his own life, and the knights' corpses disappear from the battlefield. We see them get resurrected inside a castle in the human realm, where we meet the human king, who tells the knights how evil the demons are. We see Asta spying in the castle, confused when she sees the knights magically spawn. She suspects the knights are preparing for a war council, as they all fly off again. Back at the battlefield, Azudra shows appreciation for the others, as Han sets up a barrier using a stone, to protect them from the toxin. They all rest as Ista receives a message from Asta, informing her about what she saw, and confirming that the knights were indeed resurrecting. The group has an emergency discussion to assess the situation, and Rocco explains all the problems the eastern region currently faces, starting with the most important. We see the problems are the disappearance of Vermilio, the human threat, the monsters in the east, the vacant demon lord position, and Helic. Rocco goes on to explain the threat from other nearby powers in the region, with the northern powers being the most worrisome, and the humans from the east as the least. The others think that humans are ranked too low, and we learn that humans are the weakest race amongst all the other races, except for their hero. Azudra, taking everything into account, ranks the humans at a threat level greater than SSS. We learn that more than half of the Empire's troops are posted at the northern defense line, and if the humans grow stronger, there won't be enough troops to defend against them. Azudra shares a strategy to nullify the humans' ability to resurrect, explaining that the ability comes from a spell, so they should kill the spellcaster, who is the human king. Han asks him how he is so sure, and we learn that a long time ago, Azudra fought a hero capable of reviving, and discovered that it was because of the king's magic. The spell is similar to Azudra's deep green contract, but stronger, and it allows awakened heroes to resurrect at the Human King's feet. Ista asks how the Human King is able to use such advanced magic, and Azudra figures that they must have another type of awakened being, explaining that if a hero is the combat type, then the king must be a support type. Azudra says that for now, they should prioritize defending against the next attack, and then try to retake the castle. After that, they will send an elite force to kill the Human King. We see the demons working to reinforce the castle, as Kenros tells Dorsch that he doesn't like fighting, but Dorsch tells him that they don't have a choice. Hyura and Ista worry about Asta, and we learn that Asta was trained by Hyura. Azudra returns to the place where the gate was hidden, saying the passageway may not have completely disappeared, so if they reopen it, they will find Vermilio. But he says that he can't open a gate big enough for them to get through, so he gives Hans some items instead, including a deep green pathfinder, a magic wand that points in the direction of the Empire, along with a letter explaining its function. Azudra opens a small gate, and Han passes the items through it. We see that Azudra is drained and exhausted from opening the gate. On the island, the talking bird discovers the items. We find Vermilio trying to cook a meal, but isn't satisfied with the taste. She notices the fire is about to burn out, and the bird returns with more sticks to burn. We see the bird throwing in the sticks, as well as the items that it found, but Vermilio is just glad that the fire is back. After everything Halleck has told her about his past, Vermilio sees him in a new light and is no longer suspicious of him. She is interrupted when a villager comes up to inform her of the Great Witch's arrival at the village. Vermilio runs off, telling the villager to let the others know where she's going. At the village, Vermilio arrives to find out the witch has already left. She's frustrated at herself for being too slow, but Halleck enters with the villager, who apologizes and reveals that she is late because he took a nap on his way. The village chief reassures them that he told the witch about their situation and that she has voided her barrier to allow them to visit her. Vermilio and Halleck head to the witch's residence with the bird, who we learn is named Pee-wee. When the group gets to the witch's house, they immediately sense the monstrous aura surrounding it. Vermilio is intimidated, but she continues forward. At the top of the mountain, the group is greeted by a creature similar to Pee-wee, and they meet a beautiful woman who we learn is the Great Witch. Halleck introduces himself to the witch, who says that since they helped the villagers, she is willing to aid them in getting back home. The witch tells them that the continent they seek lies in the northwest. This intrigues Vermilio as she realizes there may be more continents out there. The witch then looks at Halleck, advising him not to rush himself and leave unprepared. She tells them to prepare rations and a sturdy ship to withstand the storms. She also tells them to catch a rare sea creature named the Korstag, to help guide them through a troublesome stretch of the ocean. She shows them what it looks like, and Vermilio realizes it's the creature they caught back at the beach. Halleck runs off to catch the Korstag, while the witch offers Vermilio a place to stay for the night. Vermilio confronts the witch, asking about her identity since she is different from the island's residents and seems to possess great knowledge. The witch brushes off her suspicions and instead tells Vermilio to focus on her own problems. She warns her that Halleck is far more dangerous than she can imagine, revealing that Halleck has the potential to bring about a great calamity. Back at the village, the villagers have finished building and loading the ship, and Halleck captures 3 Korstags for the journey but releases 2 of them, keeping 1 for their trip. Halleck and Vermilio bid the villagers farewell and thank them for their hospitality throughout their stay. The witch meanwhile explains to Halleck that the ship will run with the help of a box that Vermilio's magic can power up. If the box breaks, they will have to row the rest of the way. After saying her goodbyes to Pee-wee, Vermilio is ready to board. The 2 set off on their journey back as the villagers wave at them. The witch ponders over what choices Vermilio will make but is confident that she will overcome any challenges that she will face. On their journey, Halleck mentions how the witch looks like Vermilio, and she admits that she suspects that the witch is from their kingdom but wouldn't tell her anything. Suddenly, Vermilio notices Pee-wee pop out of a barrel, excitedly telling her it decided to come with her. Vermilio is furious, thinking the journey is too dangerous for him, until she sees he has a letter for her. The letter is from the witch and states that Pee-wee would make a great companion for the journey as it has experience traveling with the witch, and its body is surprisingly durable. She also advises Vermilio to relax and pat Pee-wee's fluffy body when she wants to calm down. Halleck welcomes Pee-wee on board, but Vermilio is still unconvinced and demands they turn around to send Pee-wee back, when she is suddenly interrupted by a giant octopus that emerges from the ocean. Halleck gets ready to fight it, but Vermilio stops him and uses the box to propel them safely away from the monster. She then yells at Pee-wee to return, but Halleck convinces her to let it stay, saying he will keep Pee-wee safe. She remembers the witch's advice and agrees on the condition that they send Pee-wee back if it gets too dangerous. The crew continues their journey until they reach the stretch of sea that the witch warned them about. As instructed, they tie the corstag to the ship and release it into the water, and it takes them in the right direction, leading them safely out of the fog. They continue without much trouble until they encounter a storm and end up being pulled into a whirlpool. The giant octopus also re-emerges to add to their troubles, and Halleck gets ready to take it on. The octopus attacks, and Halleck recklessly launches himself at it, landing a strong punch. However, it has no effect on the octopus. When Vermilio tries to help, Halleck stops her, telling her to escape while he fends off the monster. Vermilio protests at first, but upon seeing Halleck's determined look, she decides to listen to him. She guides the ship out of the whirlpool as Halleck continues fighting. We see Halleck get bitten by the monster as it wraps its tentacles around him. Vermilio watches helplessly as the monster pulls Halleck underwater. She desperately calls for Halleck to come back up but gets no response. The storm subsides while Vermilio and Pee-wee wait for Halleck, finally accepting that he is gone. Vermilio notices the continent in the distance and arrives at the shore, only to find Halleck, who somehow survived and made it to the continent before her. Halleck apologizes and explains that when he got sucked into the whirlpool after fending off the monster, he tried to escape and found his way to the continent. Vermilio yells at Halleck for his recklessness but expresses her appreciation towards him for risking his life for them. She then forbids him from making any solo moves and storms off toward the ship to start unloading. They get their stuff, release the corstag into the sea, and then head further into the continent in search of a village where they can get a map. Vermilio senses a presence and stops, thinking that Halleck might be responsible, until a fireball flies at her from the forest. Soon, they are surrounded by the natives who try to capture them. Vermilio notices they are weak and timid and decides to comply with them. The barbarians shackle them with wooden cuffs and lead them to their home. Vermilio notices how the place and its people are in rough shape. The captors explain that the kingdom of Aril used to be peaceful and thriving but was brought down by only 50 barbarians from the Toffman tribe. We learn that the Toffman tribe suddenly powered up, and their king gained unimaginable power. That the Toffman tribe took over and cursed the Arilians to look like monsters. They force the tribe into heavy labor and mercilessly punish anyone who doesn't meet the quota by making them find more slaves. Vermilio realizes they captured her group for the same reason and calls them despicable. The Arilian admits it's wrong, but he is desperate to protect his friends as they run into the Arilian princess. She notices Vermilio's group and demands the Arilian soldiers to release them, telling them that she doesn't approve of their actions, no matter how desperate they are to save the tribe. At that moment, the group hears a rumbling noise, which turns out to be the Toffman tribe and their king marching over to the kingdom earlier than expected. The princess warns Vermilio and the others to leave through the rear gate, or they will be in trouble, but they hide nearby to observe the situation. The princess greets the Toffman king, who tells her he's bored and knocks her down. The Toffman king tells her that he wishes for conquest and wants to use the Arilians as soldiers in his army to take over other kingdoms. The princess protests, saying this goes against their agreement to spare them if they surrender. However, the Toffman king brushes her off, saying that the agreement will hold if they fight and claim victory on the battlefield as well. The princess argues that her people are too weak to fight, but the king demands they get on his wagons or he will massacre them. Halleck jumps in and gets between the Toffman tribe and the Arilians, demanding the king to stop. Vermilio joins him, casting a firewall to keep the Arilians safe while Halleck prepares to take on the Toffman tribe. The king orders his soldiers to attack, but Halleck slaps them away with no trouble. Frustrated at his soldiers being useless against Halleck, the Toffman king takes matters into his own hands and faces Halleck. He punches Halleck, creating a cloud of smoke with its force. Everyone except Vermilio is afraid that Halleck has lost. The king then demands Vermilio to tell him where she's from, so he can ravage that place. Vermilio brushes him off, saying she will only fight him if he defeats Halleck. Right on cue, Halleck emerges from the smoke behind the king. The king is shocked that he survived his punch and launches a flurry of attacks, but Halleck is unaffected by them. Halleck punches the king back and launches him into the sky, defeating him instantly while everyone marvels at his strength. He demands the king to release the Arilians and never show his face again. The king stubbornly refuses, and Vermilio notices an aura emerge around him. The Toffman king grows in size, becoming more monstrous, and looks menacingly at Halleck, who seems unfazed as they get ready to face off again. The king strikes at Halleck, but ends up punching the ground as Halleck dodges his attack. The king continues screaming and punching the ground, appearing to have completely lost control of himself. Vermilio tells the Aurelians to get to safety and leave the situation to her. Vermilio launches a fireball at the king, dismembering his arm, only for it to regenerate immediately. Halleck emerges from the cloud and stands in front of the king, while Vermilio feels she is too weak to fight the king herself. Halleck punches the king's arm, blowing it off again, and Vermilio is amazed at how powerful Halleck is even without using any magic. The king stands paralyzed as his body starts crumbling to dust, and Vermilio realizes the battle is over already. We learn that the king used all of his life energy to boost his power. Vermilio speculates the reasons for the Toffman tribe's power boost, despite there being no toxin covering the land, and feels that something strange is going on. A Toffman soldier surprisingly thanks them, followed by the rest of them before they leave. Vermilio realizes that they were unable to defy their king the whole time. Suddenly, all the Aurelians, having been freed from the curse, start glowing and transforming back to their original forms. The princess announces the end of the Toffman tribe's rule, and bows to thank Halleck and Vermilio. The princess asks them for their names, so her kingdom can remember their heroic deeds and songs and tales, and Pee-wee excitedly tells them. The Aurelians celebrate with the group all night long, chanting their names in praise. The next morning, Vermilio gets ready to depart west, towards two large kingdoms, hoping to find a map that will lead her back to the Empire, as Halleck waves at the Aurelians, who wish them a safe journey ahead. A passing traveler informs them that the two kingdoms were destroyed after a violent war. He points them toward another town in the distance where they can learn more about the war. In the small town, the group encounters a mysterious lady by a fountain singing about a hero named Angus, so they assume she is one of the survivors of the ruined kingdoms. They find a map seller with a map of the Empire, but he demands 50,000 len for it. Vermilio requests that the shopkeeper hold onto the map while they arrange the money. They sell off the crystals they received from the Aurelian princess, which only nets them 25,000 of the 50,000 len they need for the map. The two start thinking of ways to earn money quickly, when suddenly, they hear a person announce that there is a cooking competition with 30,000 len as the prize money. Vermilio realizes that Halleck can win with his skills, so she signs them up for the contest. Another contestant named Ajikaba joins in, and we learn he is the undefeated champion of the cooking contest. There are also other formidable opponents, like Munni the mild taste, and Tuga the spicy sauce, who join the contest, and we see that the head judge is Master Rio Raiden, who is well known in the cooking world. The competition starts, and the theme is one-pot dishes. The audience cheers at the dishes being created by the other contestants, while hardly noticing Halleck and Vermilio. The audience continues to mock them until they see how skillfully Halleck chops his vegetables, making it look like he's frozen in place. The other contestants are also intimidated by Halleck's skill, and Vermilio tells them how he won the Demon Lord competition. The competition heats up as everyone starts seeing Halleck as a serious competitor. Meanwhile, Pee-wee is listening to the mysterious lady singing by the fountain. We learn that Pee-wee went looking for popular foods to help Halleck and got lost in the process. The lady offers to help Pee-wee find the others. At the competition, it is time to taste and judge the dishes. All the contestants are confident in their dishes, making Vermilio nervous. Rio starts tasting the dishes. He scores Tuga's and Munni's dishes 70 points each, and Ajikaba's dish 98 points, but when he tastes Halleck's dish, he scores it 120 points, making them the winners. Ajikaba is devastated and vows never to cook again, but Halleck praises him, which inspires him to improve. He gives Halleck his personal recipe book and departs on his cooking journey. Just as Vermilio thinks Pee-wee is missing, he appears behind her and learns that he is late, and the competition is already over. With the prize money, they buy the map, and learn they need to head northwest to reach the Empire, meaning they must pass through the ruined kingdoms on the way. The map seller warns them to avoid the abandoned kingdoms, but when they ask why, the lady from the fountain appears and informs them that a warrior of darkness prowls that area. We learn that the lady's name is Madame Iris, as she explains that crossing paths with the warrior of darkness means certain death. Despite the warnings, Vermilio decides to take the route anyway to avoid wasting more time. Before they leave, Madame Iris tells Pee-wee something, and then the group departs, soon arriving at the ruins of the kingdom. They walk through the ruins until Vermilio suddenly stops, frozen by a menacing aura. The sky darkens, and the warrior of darkness materializes. They try to run away from the warrior, but it catches up to them instantly. Just as it is about to attack, Hulk swoops in and punches it away. Vermilio realizes that the Warrior of Darkness possesses the same aura as the Toffman King. However, her thoughts are abruptly interrupted by Helic, who urgently instructs her to take Pee-wee and escape while he confronts the warrior in battle. Vermilio says she will return to help once she has ensured Pee-wee's safety. Helic and the warrior start fighting, and Helic is injured immediately. Vermilio is shocked to see Helic struggle and realizes that the warrior draws power from a sinister source. She hurries to get Pee-wee to safety so that she can return to help Helic. Pee-wee then notices something, and we see that Helic manages to break the warrior's sword. When Vermilio thinks the battle is over, the warrior regenerates his sword with the shadows. After hiding Pee-wee away, Vermilio returns while charging a powerful spell. She launches it at the warrior, who remains unaffected. However, her attack leaves the warrior wide open, giving Helic an opportunity to land a strong punch on him. The warrior is thrown backwards by the force of the punch, but quickly recovers and teleports to Helic, slashing him across the chest. The fight continues as Helic and the warrior exchange blows. Vermilio notices Helic slowing down due to his injuries. Vermilio speculates that the warrior is enchanted with a spell similar to the one used by Zudra, and believes they cannot defeat it without finding the spellcaster. She attempts to flee from the warrior until they can figure out a plan to defeat it, but Helic emerges from behind them and attacks the warrior, and starts beating him. Vermilio notices something is off about Helic and remembers the Great Witch's warning. She yells at Helic to stop, but he ignores her. Pee-wee appears and starts chirping a song, which helps the darkness subside and causes the warrior to stop being hostile. Pee-wee explains that Madame Iris advised him to sing that song in case they ran into trouble. Back to his usual self, Helic walks over to them, and Vermilio checks to see if he's okay. When she tries to heal him, Helic stops her and uses his super recovery mode to heal himself. The Warrior of Darkness gets up and starts walking away. The group follows him all the way to the ruins of a castle, where several corpses lie. The warrior speaks, explaining that the kingdom only wanted peace, but seeing their loved ones getting murdered enraged them into waging war against the other kingdom. The conflict escalated, and forbidden magic was unleashed, transforming the knights into monstrous beings that slaughtered the kingdoms. In a desperate attempt to protect the survivors, the Warrior of Darkness was compelled to use the same magic to fight back. However, the people he sought to defend perished, and he descended into madness. The warrior expresses gratitude to the group for freeing him from the curse of darkness, but as he crumbles to dust, he notices Helic's weapon and advises him against possessing it. He then gives Helic his cursed sword to aid him in future battles. In his final moments, the warrior requests the group to sing the song again. However, just as Pee-wee starts singing, Iris stops him and expresses her desire to sing it. She reveals that she followed the group out of curiosity, and is happy to see that they saved the warrior from the curse. She walks over to the warrior and hugs him. We learn that his name is Angus, and he is her older brother. Angus is shocked to see her alive, and Iris explains that even though the hex deprived him of awareness, he still managed to protect her and save many people for their kingdom. Helic leaves with his group so the siblings can be alone, as we hear Iris singing for Angus one last time. The group continues onward and reaches the ruins of the next town. Pee-wee suggests they race across the walls, but Vermilio protests, saying it's dangerous. However, Vermilio eventually joins in. Pee-wee reaches a gap in the wall, and Vermilio laughs at him, thinking he lost. However, Pee-wee flies into the air and gets ahead of them, but while he's too busy celebrating, he flies straight into a monster's mouth. Back in the Empire, we see the winged knights and demons engaged in a fierce battle, with the demons easily winning. Ista watches the battle unfold and recounts the situation. We learn that the humans launched another attack on Castle Urim, but were intercepted by the defense forces. Azudra managed to retake the Demon Lord's castle with his special assault team, reinforcing the castle's defenses to hold against another invasion. Since the winged knights can resurrect endlessly, they keep launching continuous attacks, but the demons manage to fend them off each time. Knowing that humans will soon reach their full potential as heroes, Ista is anxious, but she tries to have faith. Meanwhile, Han updates Azudra on the status of the battle, reporting that they have captured 5 knights. However, capturing more is difficult since they have countermeasures to avoid being captured alive, and Azudra admits that the plan to capture the knights is not paying off well. Ista then enters to report her findings on the humans' combat level. We learn that they have reached level 30, With their leader Edel reaching level 36, Han comments on the difficulty of raising combat level and how the humans' hero status is helping them progress quickly. Azudra suggests reinforcing the army, or they might start taking casualties, but knows that they lack the numbers. Ista reports the results of the Demon King's combat level evaluation. We learn that Hyura is at level 52, and their other soldiers are around level 40, so Azudra is reassured that they will be able to hold out for longer. Azudra senses something, but he brushes it off and proceeds to perform his daily ritual to locate Vermilio. Rocco expresses concern that Azudra is exhausting himself by using magic every day. Azudra reassures her, insisting that he is perfectly fine. However, Han argues that he is lying and is actually quite weak. Rocco advises Azudra to take it easy for the sake of the troops' morale. Azudra assures her that he will perform the ritual less frequently if he fails this time, but Han once again accuses him of lying, and Azudra tells him to be quiet. We learn that Azudra has been performing the locator spell daily to keep track of Vermilio and ensure her safety. Azudra begins the ritual and is surprised to see when the doll lands within the map, confirming that Vermilio is getting closer. Azudra immediately requests a detailed map of the region to pinpoint Vermilio's exact location. Meanwhile, we see the winged knights arguing in their castle, while Asta watches them. Asta learns that the knights aren't focused on winning and have other goals in mind. The knights end the meeting, but one of them senses Asta in the shadows and rushes over to find her. Asta hides in time, and the knight thinks he must have just imagined it, but Asta figures that their hero abilities are growing sharper as they couldn't sense her before. Back at the castle, Han assembles a small search party on Azudra's orders to find Vermilio. Based on her movements, Azudra sees that Vermilio knows her way back to the Empire. Ista asks them if Halleck is still with her because she is worried that he might turn out to be an enemy, but he reassures them not to worry. Han clarifies that Vermilio is either bringing Halleck back as an ally or not at all. Azudra expresses trust in Vermilio's judgment, as she had the opportunity to observe Halleck closely for a long time. Han believes that Azudra had trusted Halleck from the beginning, but he clarifies that even he isn't fearless enough to blindly trust him. However, his initial instinct was to have faith in him. Azudra then discusses his desire to resolve matters peacefully, acknowledging that there are good and bad people among all, including humans. We witness him reminiscing about an old friend who appears to be human. In the desert, Vermilio and the rest of the group engage in a battle against monsters as they make their way to the Empire. We learn that Vermilio has been trying to stop Halleck from fighting ever since he lost control in his last battle. Although she is convinced that Halleck is not an adversary, his immense power unsettles her. Halleck requests a conversation with Vermilio. After setting up a fire, we see Vermilio and Halleck enjoying some hot chocolate when Halleck shows her his short sword. We learn that the sword is broken and used to be a longsword called Hero Killer. Halleck explains that while the sword has lost most of its magic, it still has enough power to kill a hero. He then asks Vermilio to take the sword and use it on him if he loses control again. Vermilio admits to Halleck that she was initially suspicious of him but has changed her mind after observing him on their journey and refuses to take the weapon. Halleck explains that it's a favor that he wishes her to consider once he tells her everything about his past, the power of heroes, and the human realm. We see Halleck when he was 8 years old and very poor, pleading with a lady to pay him more for his work, but she refuses and shuts the door. On his way back, he sees his younger brother Kless getting bullied by older kids. Halleck tells them to stop, but they are arrogant because of their nobility status. They threaten him, telling him he must not defy them. Halleck agrees, but asks that they hit him instead of his brother, and they begin beating him up. We learn that Halleck and Kless were orphaned at a young age when their village was ravaged by monsters that killed their parents. Halleck took on the responsibility of caring for Kless, and the two headed to the royal capital to search for work, only to be abused by the nobles. After the bullies leave, Kless comes crying to Halleck, who encourages him to be stronger. Kless expresses concern about Halleck's injuries, but he reassures him by demonstrating his ability to heal instantly. In the present, Vermilio is shocked to hear this and speculates that he had awakened his hero abilities when he was just a child. Halleck then continues his story, and we see Halleck and his brother being regularly abused by the elites who would set fire to their home, throw away their food, or take their hard-earned money. Even then, it was impossible to leave because dangerous monsters were spawning outside the city walls. Despite their mistreatment, the two kept a positive outlook, hoping to leave the city when there were fewer monsters outside. Halleck wished to travel with Kless and find a more peaceful place to live. One day, Kless falls dangerously ill due to malnutrition, and a man from the slums tells Halleck that he won't make it through the night. Halleck blames himself for not providing enough food and sets out to find a doctor for Kless, planning to pay for it with his savings. The man tells him to give up, saying no one would help him, but Halleck is determined to save his brother. He carries Kless on his back and searches door to door for a doctor. No one in the city is willing to help them, but Halleck doesn't give up and tries to keep his spirits up by talking about their dreams of traveling. Kless continues to get weaker, and Halleck desperately begs the people around him to help, only to be harassed by them. As he is about to give up hope, a noble girl approaches him and asks what he wants, so he tells her his situation, and she runs off and calls for her father to help them. Her father takes them to his residence and gets a doctor to help Kless, who barely manages to survive. Halleck is deeply grateful to the father, and after meeting these kind nobles, the brothers' lives change completely. 15 years later, we see humans desperately fending off monsters from infiltrating the city walls. The soldiers are too weak to fight them and are about to be defeated when Kless arrives and kills one with a single swipe. We learn that Kless is now the captain of the 3rd Infantry Regiment and is 18 years old. He leads the soldiers to charge at the monsters. The soldiers return to the town, and we see 22-year-old Halleck watching them from above. We learn that the man who saved them was a member of the Raffid family, who had supported the royal family since its founding. The girl who helped Halleck was named Shalami, the eldest daughter of the family. She visited the two after Kless recovered and became their friend. We see the other nobles stop harassing the brothers once they see Halleck and Kless being close with Shalami and her family. However, Kless is not satisfied knowing that other people still suffer in the slums. He thinks that the people are too worried about monsters to care about fighting the injustice of the class system in the capital. Kless decides to join the army when he grows up to bring peace to the capital by defeating the monsters. We see Kless training hard and learn that he joined the army at 16 and got promoted to the rank of captain at 18. Mr. Raffid comes to greet Halleck, and they discuss Kless and his achievements. Raffid suggests that Kless may become the savior of the kingdom. As Raffid is about to leave, he turns to Halleck and tells him that he is strong enough to fight alongside Kless, which could increase their chances against the monsters. But Halleck says he's just an amateur and is better suited for labor work. While waiting for Kless to return, Halleck notices him with Shalami and wonders if they might be in love. The two notice him, and they head to a pub to enjoy some drinks together. Kless tells Halleck that he might be headed for another expedition outside the capital and might not see him for some time. Halleck wishes him a safe journey and promises to cook him a nice meal upon his return. After Kless leaves for his expedition, more monsters start spawning near the capital, so the kingdom enacts a military draft. Halleck is sent on an expedition where his group encounters a dangerous monster, which Vermilio determines to be a New World life form. Halleck tells her how terrified he was of that monster but stayed to fight it as his comrades needed him. Halleck focuses on bearing the monster's attacks instead of fighting back and realizes he can withstand its attacks. He changes his tactics and counterattacks the monster, exchanging blows until finally defeating it. After the battle, the squadron informs Edel that they can't help him anymore since their commanding officer and captain are dead. We learn that Halleck's squadron was assigned the task of saving Edel's town from monsters, as Edel himself had requested assistance from the capital. The squadron leaves, but Halleck decides to stay behind and accompany Edel back to his town. Upon reaching the town, Edel is devastated to see it has been completely overrun by monsters. Halleck tells him that it may not have been too long since the town was overrun, and there might still be survivors they can rescue. With this in mind, they proceed to offer their assistance. In the town, they search for survivors and come across a woman skillfully fighting off the monsters. They decide to join her in defending against the monsters. The woman is surprised to witness Halleck effortlessly defeating the monsters with his bare hands, but Halleck tells her that her swordsmanship is just as impressive. The woman explains that her sword is enchanted with magic specifically effective against monsters, which is how she fended off the monsters. She then asks Halleck to share his secret, but he humbly tells her that he used to work as a construction worker, but she assumes that Halleck is just playing dumb. Meanwhile, survivors approach Edel and inform him that the townspeople have been evacuated to the nearby castle grounds with the assistance of a group of mercenaries. We find out that several mercenary groups had formed, specializing in fighting monsters for money. We learn that the woman's name is Alicia, and she is the leader of the mercenary group that passed by when they noticed the town was in trouble. Edel asks Alicia to stay back and help his town, and she tells him that she will only be able to do so if Helic joins her group, to which he agrees. Helic then spends his days fighting as a mercenary alongside Alicia, Edel, and their other companions, enjoying their time together. One day, Alicia and Helic are discussing their progress in eradicating monster nests when Alicia mentions how incredible Helic's abilities are. Alicia tells Helic that she comes from a family of mercenaries and that her grandfather was a hero who fought demons. She tells him that seeing his strength made her realize her own limits, but she still thinks he is amazing and can save more people than she ever could. She asks him to stay in her group after they are done saving the town. Helic continues to fight alongside Alicia for 4 years, but despite their efforts, the number of monsters doesn't seem to decrease. Meanwhile in the kingdom, they discovered the Demon Lord's castle during an expedition and announce a mission to kill the Demon Lord, suspecting the demons to be behind the rise of monsters. But Vermilio knows that demons are not responsible for all the monsters. The human king assigns the task to Kless, who sets off to defeat the Demon Lord. As Helic and the mercenaries discuss Kless, we learn that he is accompanied by the heavy infantry commander Zeruzian, the great sage Mikaros, and 5,000 soldiers. Alicia yells at the others to be more sympathetic to Helic, but Helic is confident that Kless will win. Kless defeats the Demon Lord 3 weeks later, stabbing him in his head. While the city celebrates his victory, Helic rushes to see Kless, and learns he was critically injured and poisoned during the battle. Mikaros, the man who cured Kless when he fell sick as a kid, comes to see him, and we learn that he is the great sage who fought alongside Kless in the recent campaign. He apologizes for being unable to help Kless during the battle but promises to save him. Back in Edel's town, Alicia notes how the number of monsters remains the same despite defeating the Demon Lord. Everyone brushes off her concerns, but they turn out to be true when word reaches the kingdom that a horde of monsters is headed their way. The threat of the imminent attack leaves the citizens in chaos, who demand that Kless come out to fight the horde. Alicia tells Helic to ignore them and help fight the monsters, but Helic suspects that the Demon Lord may have resurrected and sent the monsters, so he decides to take matters into his own hands and kill the Demon Lord himself. We see Helic walking alone towards the Demon Lord's castle. He walks through the destroyed remains and discovers strange mannequins resembling soldiers from the kingdom. At that moment, he senses a strong presence and follows it, only to come face to face with Azudra, who is wandering around the castle. Azudra is surprised to see him and tries to stop him from proceeding, but Helic is determined to defeat him, believing he is the Demon Lord, but he falls right into Azudra's trap. However, Helic manages to escape the trap unharmed, and Azudra fights back using his powers. Helic relentlessly attacks him until he realizes that he is not the Demon Lord. Azudra tells him that the demons are not responsible for spawning the monsters and discovers that Helic is not the hero who defeated the Demon Lord. Azudra explains that the Demon Lord's castle is just a small part of the Demon Empire, and that he is one of the 4 generals who helped rule it. He assures him that the demons have no intentions of waging war against the humans, and tells him that the uptick in monster activity is due to the fallout of the siege on the Demon Lord's castle. Helic is shocked to learn that the castle was actually preventing monsters from spawning. He asks Azudra why he's at the castle, and Azudra takes him to the burial site he made for the demons who died from the attack by the humans. Helic asks him if he despises the humans for killing them, and Azudra says he does, but the demons were already aware of the risk when taking up the post. He explains that the demons hope to reforge their friendship with humans like they once had. The two discuss the relationship between humans and demons, and Helic's perception of demons changes completely. He wonders why Kless would still fight the Demon Lord after learning the truth. Helic asks Azudra whether peace between the 2 kingdoms can be established, and Azudra says it's possible, telling him about the competition for the next Demon Lord. When he returns to the human world, he sees the aftermath of a battle between the monsters and humans and rushes to the kingdom to find his friends. He is relieved to see them safe and sound and learns that the nobles have shut the city's gates, forcing the soldiers and mercenaries to face the monsters, resulting in the death of all the others. We witness Alicia screaming at a noble for closing the gates, and the noble tells her that their lives matter more. Alicia becomes enraged, and Edel has to hold her back. The mercenaries ask Helic to check on Alicia and Edel, who are at the castle, demanding that the commander be held accountable for their actions. On his way to the castle, Halleck notices the citizens gathered around some demons who were captured during the siege and throwing rocks at them. Halleck becomes infuriated, and after some hesitation, he steps forward in front of the crowd, telling them to stop, but is only met with more aggression as they throw rocks at him. One of the demons tied behind him tells him to inform Azudra about the power of the new world that is hidden among the humans. He is abruptly interrupted by Mr. Raffid, who warns Halleck not to be fooled by the demons. But at that moment, the demons suddenly transform into monsters and attack the crowd, but we see 3 human soldiers emerge and swiftly defeat the monsters. Halleck is astonished by their formidable strength, and Raffid explains that they were blessed with the power of heroes, urging Halleck to have faith in him. Later, Raffid announces what they learned about the demon realm and explains his plan to defeat the demons by using the power of hero awakening. The artificially awakened heroes help fend off forthcoming demon attacks, and the kingdom, now safer, begins to prosper. Halleck is still unconvinced that the demons are evil but doesn't tell anyone about his conversation with Azudra. While hanging out with his friends, the mercenaries offer him and Alicia coupons to go on a date to a new restaurant, but Halleck doesn't understand it's a date, and just thinks it's a chance to tell Alicia about his doubts. Alicia goes to get ready for the date, and Edel comes in to cheer Halleck on, who is still completely oblivious. Suddenly, one of Klaas's companions from the expedition comes in, and urgently asks Halleck for help. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like, and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. In a kingdom covered by miasma at the end of the earth, home to monsters that once dominated and devoured mankind, a young girl is taken to the land, where she is presented to the king as the 99th sacrifice. The chancellor, Anubis, thinks that the girl is the scrawniest sacrifice they've been sent, saying she is not worth devouring, and suggests just tearing her apart. But the girl interrupts him, calling him a dog, and claiming that she is worth eating. The two begin to argue, but the king finds her intriguing, and orders Anubis to leave. He is left in the room with the girl, who calls him a short-tempered king, warning him that he'll be alone someday with that attitude. Her watchers, Sai and Klops, tell her to apologize to the king, who makes his way to her as he calls her impudent. The king reveals that every sacrifice before her has trembled in fear when presented to him, so he doesn't believe that the girl is not afraid of him, ordering her to beg for her life, as he wraps his hand around her head. But she just pokes at his paw pads, finding them soft and squishy. The girl claims that she doesn't have a family or a home, so she doesn't mind getting eaten. This sparks the king's interest, asking for her name, and she introduces herself as Sari. The king informs her that the sacrificial ritual will be held on the next night of Revelation when the miasma clears, and he plans to keep Sari by his side until then, to see how long her bravado will last. After that, the monsters are surprised to see that Sari is walking around the palace. The officials become upset, asking Anubis if the king plans to keep a human pet in the palace, as they remind him that the late king made peace with the humans 100 years ago, but it requires the humans to send a sacrifice to symbolize that humans and monsters are not equals. As Sari looks out the window, the king grabs onto her, telling her that she didn't have permission to leave his room, so he carries her back. Sari tells him that his room looks boring, so she suggests putting some flowers in the room, but the king claims he doesn't like flowers, revealing that flowers don't even grow in that land because of the miasma. The king warns her that she will be killed by the other monsters in the palace if they see her, so she should do what he says, making Sari realize that the king is worried about her. The king grabs her by the neck, threatening to kill her, but the girl is not scared, claiming that she has seen worse. In a flashback, Sari learns that her name means sacrifice, so she goes to her parents, knowing that the next sacrifice is going to be from their village. At that moment, she overhears them talking about how they took her in to raise her as a sacrifice. Her parents notice her presence, and the room is illuminated by lightning as they stare at her. To this day, she still remembers the scary look in their eyes. And she tells the king that his eyes are different, so she is not afraid of him, and the king starts to take pity on her. They go to an old fortress city, which was damaged during their war with the humans 100 years ago. While the king is inspecting it, Sari sees the ruins of the lower town. The king explains that it's a lawless zone, where the monsters often cause trouble with humans, and it's his duty to stop that from happening. Sari sees flowers growing in the city, and the king explains that the miasma in the area is thin, so it's the only place in the land where flowers can grow. She takes some flowers from the garden, and puts a crown of flowers on the king's head, telling him that he looks adorable, but the king removes it, thinking that she is mocking him. Sari says that he always has a scary look on his face, so she wants to make the king feel better by making him look at the flowers. But the king grabs onto her, telling her that a storm is approaching. They head back to his room, where he tells her that the night of revelation is approaching. Lightning strikes, causing Sari to panic, because she remembers the look in her parents' eyes. The king covers her with his tail, so she won't panic when lightning strikes. Sari says that she is no longer scared, because the king is so warm, telling him that he doesn't need to act tough around her. On the night of revelation, they prepare Sari for the ritual of sacrifice, and she is happy because she gets to wear such beautiful clothes, thinking that it's like a wedding dress. Anubis escorts her to the altar chamber, where she will wait for the king's arrival, but she is ambushed by a lizard monster, who plans to overthrow the king. He thinks that killing her will help him with his goal, so he tries to attack her with his knife, but a cloaked man gets in his way, blocking the knife with his hand. The lizard thinks that he is an agent of the king, calling the king a coward, but Sari exclaims that they have a great king who prevents needless bloodshed. The lizard attacks again, slicing through the man's cloak and revealing his face. He disarms the lizard, pointing his sword against him and making the monster run away. Sari realizes that he is the king, but he points her to the exit as he explains that he is no king because he is actually half human, revealing that the night of revelation turns him into a human, so he has to hide in darkness until he turns back into a beast. The king feels bad, thinking that he is a pitiful weakling who is unworthy to be king, but Sari covers his wound, saying that he is not weak. Sari realizes that he didn't eat any of the past sacrifices, seeing that he has plenty of scars on his arms, and we learn that he used his own blood to make the other beasts think that the sacrifices were devoured during the ritual. She says that a weak person could never do that, so she calls him the strongest, saying that she wants to serve as nourishment for him instead of going home. Her chains break as the king hugs her, and the next day, the king informs everyone that Sari is going to be the queen. His subjects are not happy with this, so he challenges them to step forward, putting them in their place. Sari thinks about calling him Lionheart, which means brave-hearted, and he accepts it, saying he can live with that. Later, we see two officials begging him to reconsider his decision, because the queen should descend from a noble lineage, but the king scares them into submission. Sari is walking around the palace again, so Syac and Klops warn her that the king will be mad again, but she isn't afraid of the king, because she knows he is actually a good person who is trying to protect everyone. At that moment, the king appears, lifting her off the ground, and taking her back to the room, where he tells her to wait quietly, but Sari wants to help him out, so he tells her to join the court banquet, where the nobles of the land will gather. The king reveals that his officials proposed it to him, thinking that it would change his mind about making Sari his queen, but he tells Sari to hold her head high. That evening, the king returns to his room, where he sees Sari sleeping by the window. He carries her, and she screams as she wakes up, apologizing for falling asleep while he was working. The king sees flowers on her lap, and she reveals that they are artificial flowers that she made to help him relax whenever he returns to his room. The king says he is not interested in flowers, but he thinks that artificial flowers suit him, because he is also a sham that has a lot to hide. Sari thinks that it doesn't matter if it's artificial, as long as it can touch people's hearts, and she tells him that he is like the bees that land on the flowers, because they are gentle and hard-working despite their scary appearance. She assures Lanhart that he is not fake, even wanting to be like him as she falls asleep. Guests from all over the land visit their castle, and Anubis tells Sari to behave herself during the event, seeing her as a hindrance to the king. They hold the banquet, where the guests are looking forward to seeing the new queen. Anubis tells them to stay silent as the king makes his entrance, but the guests are shocked as they see the king carrying Sari, mocking her appearance, and making rude remarks, since they look down on humans. The king demands silence, and Sari holds her head high, as Anubis tells the guests to enjoy the banquet. They sit on their thrones, but Sari notices the guests glaring at her, so she stands up and serves a guest some food, making everyone surprised. The guest tries the food, finding it delicious, and all the other guests start enjoying the banquet. Sari goes to the kitchen to help serve the food, but she encounters some monsters who don't want to let her enter, since she's human. Sai and Klops tell them that she is the queen, so their head chef lets her enter. She gets food from the kitchen, and even helps with cleaning the tables, but a chameleon monster still finds her suspicious. Sari sees a strange wine, which is said to be a gift from a trading city, so she takes it to the king, but the chameleon monster uses his tail to make her fall. She accidentally pours the wine on the king, and the chameleon condemns her, claiming that she did it on purpose. The guests stare at her, but the king licks her face and acts cool. He grabs the chameleon's tail, knowing that he used it to make Sari fall, and reminds him that Sari is his queen, and he threatens to kill him with his claws, but Sari stops him. Leonhard spares his life, telling him that he owes his life to the queen. After the banquet, Sari thinks about what happened, when the floor suddenly starts glowing around her. The king appears, and she grabs onto him, as a holy beast named Gwibber takes them to the air. They start flying away from the castle, and the king thinks that the gusty upper airs would make her feel better, and Sari is relieved, because she thought that the king was going to get rid of her, seeing herself as a burden. They land on the ground, and the king calls her a fool, telling her that she is already a part of him, so he won't get rid of her. She is worried that he'll end up hurting someone like the chameleon, but he is sure that she will stop him if something like that happens again. He tells her that he carries a heavy burden as a false king, and it's only when he is around her that he feels truly free, even saying that he can become a better king with her at his side, so he wants her to stay with him. Sari studies about the monster kingdom of Osmargo, thinking that she needs to learn about it, but she is having a hard time taking it all in. Anubis reluctantly agrees to teaching her because the king ordered it, but he thinks that he is just wasting his time, so he goes back to his other duties. Sari goes outside with Leonhard, as she wears a beast costume so she won't look too conspicuous. She sees his weird disguise, making her laugh because he looks too suspicious. They walk along a busy street, where she discovers how normal beasts live their lives, thinking that they aren't so different from humans. She sees a bakery, and she is happy to see some bread, saying there is no bread in the palace. The baker's family hears this, so they become suspicious, but the baker tells them that the king would never dress up as such a shady character. We learn that the royals and aristocrats took all the rarities under the last king, but the current king doesn't care about delicacies or fancy decorations, which is good for their bakery. They end up buying some bread, and Sari feeds it to Leonhard, who thinks that it's nothing special. As they eat bread, she hears a child monster named Bolus crying, because he got separated from his mother. They help Bolus find his mother, but as they walk, Sari suddenly feels dizzy, so Leonhard takes Bolus from her, as she wonders what is going on. Bolus starts crying, and Sari assures him that they will find his mother. His mother finally sees him, thanking Sari for her help, but as Bolus falls from the king's head, Sari catches her, revealing her human face to everyone. Bolus's mother suddenly acts hostile, telling her not to touch her child, as the other monsters make rude remarks just because she's human. They start throwing stones at her, so the king unleashes his aura, obscuring their vision, and disappearing with Sari. They return to the palace, where Anubis informs him about a report that a human was spotted in the city, but he ignores it, along with the other requests that are presented to him. Sari apologizes for all the trouble that she caused, knowing that she's scared all the townspeople. She notes that it is similar to how humans react to beasts, and she thinks that it's because the two races have a history of war between them. But she is convinced that both races don't like conflict. The king apologizes to her, because he exposed her to danger, saying that he let his guard down, but he admits that he enjoyed his day with her. Sari tells him not to apologize, as she hugs him, telling him that she also had fun, but she suddenly blacks out. Anubis is talking to a priest, who reveals that Sari's health is declining because of the miasma, and it could eventually lead to her death. Sari tells the king not to worry about her, but the king knows that she can't stay in the kingdom. She later wakes up on a bed, seeing the blue sky, and she realizes that she is living with humans again. A doctor approaches her, informing her that she is in his clinic. She learns that she was brought in because of miasma poisoning, so they think that she must have come from the border, where the wind can blow miasma to their side. They give her medicine that's made from the ambrosia fruit, to help purify the miasma in her body. The assistant explains that someone left her unconscious in front of the clinic 3 days ago, with more than enough money for her treatment, as well as a note. Sari looks at it, recognizing the royal seal, but she can't understand what's written on it because it's in beast writing. However, it was enough for her to realize that the king saved her life. After that, Sari helps out at the clinic, while the assistant warns her not to force herself because she still hasn't recovered. She starts living peacefully in the town, and the assistant is happy with her performance, telling her that she can stay with them. Sari thinks about returning to the king, but she knows that she can't live there, because she will just make the king worried. The villagers start talking about her, and they learn that she came from the village that sent a sacrifice. They suddenly start shunning her, as they talk behind her back. She notices this, and she remembers how the monsters in the city acted hostile toward her, so she starts running back to the clinic. But when she reaches the clinic, she discovers that they have been attacked, and the doctor tells her to leave, because the townspeople think that she is a sacrifice that escaped from the beasts, fearing that the Beast King will destroy the town while searching for her. She starts wandering on her own, knowing that she has nowhere to go, so she starts crying, and she is about to fall down the cliff. But the king arrives in his human form, grabbing onto her in the nick of time. She asks him what he's doing there in human form, and the king reveals that he turns into a human whenever he's in the human realm, because there is no miasma. Sari thought that the king abandoned her, but he reveals that the letter states that he would come back for her. He gives her a ring with a crystallized ambrosia fruit, telling her that it will purify the miasma as it enters her body, so she can now stay with him. Sari returns to the palace, where Syat and Klops are glad to see her again. She wants to learn more about the kingdom, wanting to see its people with her own eyes, so she can stay by his side. Leonhard thinks that the ring will help her develop an immunity to the miasma, and tells her she can remove it after she becomes immune. But Sari doesn't want to remove it, mentioning what it means to give a human a ring. The king has no idea, and Sari says it's a promise to stay together forever. While walking around the palace, Sari encounters a princess named Vivian, who is there to ask for the king's hand in marriage. We learn that this was arranged by Anubis, saying Sari's appearance at the banquet was met with protest, so he is looking for a new queen to improve their relationship with their peers. More princesses arrive, and they are all there for the same reason. Vivian explains how they won't be able to face their countrymen if the king doesn't accept them, as concubines at least, before she walks away. That evening, Sari suggests granting the princesses an audience, but the king calls it a waste of time because he's not interested in keeping concubines, saying Anubis arranged this on his own. The king explains that concubines could be a threat to her position as queen, but Sari doesn't want to hold him back. The king becomes upset, saying they're done discussing the matter, and tells her to go to sleep. Sari hides in her watcher's room, where she wonders why the king was so worked up, because he doesn't normally lose his temper, so she thinks about returning to him. Meanwhile, Vivian enters the king's quarters, trying to seduce him into accepting her as a concubine, as she explains how the king can't make love with a human. Sari overhears this and enters the king's quarters, but she finds them in an awkward position, so she apologizes and runs away. The king gets upset, telling Vivian to leave, and Sari returns to her watcher's room, spending the night with them. The next day, they join the princesses at the dining table, but Vivian is nowhere to be found. The reptile princess named Amit accidentally drops her plate, so Sari cleans her up, accompanying her outside. While outside, Amit reveals she is afraid of the king, but she is there because reptilians face persecution. She is forbidden from returning home if she doesn't win the king's heart, so she has essentially been exiled. At that moment, they receive news that the royal guard has returned, and the guard captain Jorman enters the palace, wanting to meet the king immediately. He sees Sari, recognizing her as the queen, so he kneels before her, as he reveals he has sworn loyalty to the king. We learn that Jorman was once a commoner, but he rose through the ranks, managing to earn the king's trust. Amit is in love with him, revealing how Jorman used his royal guard's scarf to cover her wound in the past. She still has it with her, wanting to return it to him. She explains how he makes her heart race, and Sari thinks that the king makes her feel the same way. That evening, Sari is about to attend a banquet, but she sees Amit brooding in the corner, because her dress is ruined. The other princesses laugh at her, making Sari think they are the ones behind it. Amit wants to spend time with Jorman at the banquet, but thinks he's beyond her reach, so Sari removes her dress and lets her borrow it. Sari attends the event in her usual outfit, and Amit arrives wearing Sari's dress, returning Jorman's scarf to him and making him remember her. As Sari drinks from her cup, she sees Vivian glancing at her, and the drink causes her to black out. She later wakes up, but Vivian approaches her, grabbing her by the neck, as she asks Sari to make way for her to be queen. However, Sari comments that she wouldn't stand a chance, even if she isn't around. This makes Vivian furious, threatening to kill Sari with her claws, but Amit grabs onto her, telling Sari to run. Amit gets knocked down, as Vivian lunges at them, but the king saves them, telling her to never show herself again, as the guards take her away. The king apologizes for speaking harshly the previous night, while Anubis thinks about how the princesses were all sent home, unable to move the king's heart. But Amit stays behind, having received permission to stay as Sari's friend. The king tells Sari that she is the only woman he desires, and this makes her realize that she really is in love with the king. Jorman escorts Sari to a meeting, as he explains that Anubis will do anything to protect the king's throne, even if it means defying the king's will. At the meeting, Anubis receives Sari as their formal queen, saying he has considered the king's feelings, but he imposes certain conditions, saying Sari must become the most accomplished consort in history for the people to accept her. The first condition is to command a holy beast, because it's seen as a symbol of royal authority. This makes the king angry, because Sari has no magical power, so her life would be consumed instead, and she might also end up summoning a demon instead, which would lead to a fate worse than death. He ends the meeting, saying he doesn't need to entertain such a proposal. As they walk back to their quarters, Sari thinks there will be chaos in the kingdom because of her, but the king assures her that he will keep her safe. Sari watches Jorman as he trains the other soldiers, thinking about how everyone is doing their parts, so she wonders what she can do for the king. The next day, the king sees Sari putting her blood on the contract, so he asks her what she's doing. Sari states it's the right thing to do, saying she needs to win everyone's acceptance to protect him. She draws a sigil on the floor, trying to summon a holy beast, but she suddenly gets a bad feeling as her strength is drained away. This causes her to fall to her knees as the sigil blows her away because she stopped before finishing the incantation. She tries it again, but the spell fails, causing her to collapse. The next day, she tries again, drawing the magic circle, as Klops comments that she'll be in danger if she keeps failing, because a human shouldn't try summoning more than twice a day. She ends up failing again, and the king catches her in midair, ready to take her away, but Anubis stops him, explaining how the pledge forbids her from seeking aid. The king states he is not aiding her, but just granting her a brief rest, taking her back to his quarters. Sari claims she's fine, but the king knows she will die if she continues. Sari doesn't value her life, but the king calls her a fool, as he explains he doesn't want to lose her. The next day, Sari tries to summon a holy beast again, and a flame comes out of the circle, before she could finish her incantation. Anubis thinks she has summoned a demon, but Sari continues chanting as the flame surrounds her. The spell is successful, and a tiny beast appears in the circle. Sari collapses, as the king compliments her for her performance. While Sari rests on the bed, they offer her some food, but her holy beast keeps eating everything, leaving nothing for her to eat. The holy beast explains he is the only one with the powers of immortality and rebirth, introducing himself as Bennu. He claims he was once the most beautiful holy beast in existence, calling himself a phoenix. Anubis arrives in the room, saying Bennu can't possibly be a phoenix, and Bennu tries to pick a fight with him. They can't understand what he's saying, and we learn that only the summoner can understand the holy beast. Anubis doesn't think the people will accept Bennu as the queen's holy beast, saying it needs to have a more regal form. Later, Sari wears a bird costume and tries to teach Bennu how to fly, but they aren't making progress, so Bennu decides to quit. Bennu reveals he has already used all of his powers, and we learn he was once overworked by the soldiers during a war. He says he'll never be able to fly again, but Sari tells him not to put himself down, saying he gave her so much confidence despite his current form. The next day, Sari sees Bennu trying to fly, as an assassin is targeting him. Bennu jumps off the castle wall, and it looks like he is about to fly, but an arrow almost hits him, causing him to fall. Sari dives after him, and he calls her an idiot for trying to save an immortal bird, but he is touched by her actions, and he awakens his powers, transforming into a real phoenix. Bennu reveals he will always come back if she believes in him, as he flies around the town, making everyone acknowledge him as a holy beast. At the palace gate, a guard is attacked by a mysterious man, saying he has business with the king of monsters. He ends up getting captured, and the king goes to him while he is chained in the dungeon. The man asks him if he killed Sari, but Sari happens to appear at that moment, recognizing him as Ilya. Ilya is happy to learn she is still alive, and Sari implores the king to pardon Ilya, saying she will accept his punishment instead. So the king claims that Ilya is his guest, and he only attacked because he didn't know how to ring the doorbell. The king wants to know about Sari's relationship with him, and in a flashback, we meet a young Ilya. As he is walking around the town, Sari goes to him, giving him some medicinal herbs, because he's always hurt. But Ilya says it's normal to get hurt, since he is training to become a warrior, and Ilya promises he will keep her safe, even from the beasts. Back in the present, Ilya is released from his chains, as Anubis tells him never to return to their realm. Sari arrives, and Ilya immediately grabs her hand, telling her he's taking her home, but Sai and Klops tell him that she is living with them now. Ilya kicks them away, wanting to leave with Sari, but she chooses to stay with the king. The king reveals that Sari is going to become his queen, ordering the guards to take Ilya away. Ilya grabs onto him, but collapses, and Sari worries about him. Anubis says it's because of fatigue, so the king allows him to stay overnight. They give Ilya some food, but he doesn't eat anything despite being hungry. He asks Sari if she's really going to become the queen, which she confirms, but Ilya tells her not to worry, because he plans to escape with her. Amit joins them in the room, offering Ilya some desserts, but he slaps it away, telling her to leave. Ilya wonders what's wrong with Sari, because she's too friendly with the beasts. He thinks the king will just toy with her, but Sari tells him that the king isn't like that, saying he is even willing to make sacrifices for humans. She tells Ilya she can't go with him, making him fall silent as she leaves to get more food. After she leaves the room, she is approached by Amit, who thinks she was too forward with Ilya. Sari claims Ilya is also kind, telling her about how Ilya wanted to protect her back when they were kids. Sari tells her that he just has a sore spot for beasts, but he isn't violent for no reason. The king sees Sari giving Ilya food, and Anubis comments on how she must find comfort in spending time with another human. She returns to Ilya's room, giving him his dinner, but Ilya doesn't talk, so she tells him that they may never be able to see each other again after he leaves. But Ilya knocks her unconscious, and he tries to escape with her. The king learns about this, and Ilya is now riding a horse back to the human realm. The king chooses to pursue Ilya himself, but Anubis suggests that maybe Sari chose to go with him, since they are both humans. The king starts to think that Sari could be happier in the human realm, but Amit implores the king to rescue Sari, knowing how much she loves the king. Jorman arrives, offering to take care of Ilya, but the king summons his holy beast, telling Jorman to take charge in his absence. As Gwibber tries to track Ilya, Bennu appears, offering to help them, because he shares his soul with Sari, so he knows her location. He guides them to his master, as Ilya reaches the hyena folk's territory, where his path is blocked by some monsters. They tell Ilya they will let him go, if he leaves Sari with them so they can eat her. But this makes him angry, so he attacks them, killing them one by one. One of the hyenas run, but Ilya catches up to him. The monster's son appears, begging him not to kill his father, but Ilya raises his sword, ready to strike them down. However, Sari grabs onto him, allowing the monsters to escape. Sari asks him why he would kill a child, but Ilya just sees all monsters as a threat to humans. Sari reminds him how he trained only to protect humans from monsters, but Ilya tells her it's not enough, thinking Sari is under a spell, so he thinks about killing monsters just to wake her up. He throws her on a bed, as he confesses his love to her, but Sari rejects him, telling him he is terrifying. She tries to tell Ilya that not all monsters are evil, and that the king has a kind heart, but he doesn't believe her, explaining how the monsters see humans as prey. In a flashback, we see Ilya with his sister Misha, who is afraid that the monsters will come for her, so Ilya promises to protect her from monsters. But one day, their mother returns to their house, making them hide in the closet, as she gets slaughtered by the monsters. The monsters find them, opening the cabinet, and they think about eating one of them for dessert. They take Misha away, eating her before his eyes, but they don't like how boys taste, so they decide to toy with him, letting him run away before they get him, but he ended up getting saved by his master. He saw a new ray of hope when he met Sari, but it was also taken away from him by the monsters. Back in the present, Ilya thinks about killing all monsters, tying Sari's hands to some wooden columns, as he tells her to watch him. At that moment, the king arrives, telling him to return Sari, but Ilya claims that Sari belongs to him. Ilya charges at the king, and they start fighting, as Bennu goes to Sari, telling her how Ilya is no match. Ilya knows this himself, but he refuses to back down, thinking the monsters will kill more humans if he does. He disappears before the king's eyes, pinning down his cape, as he jumps to strike him down, but the king unleashes his aura, blowing him away. Ilya still refuses to give up, telling the king to kill him, because he wants Sari to see how violent monsters are. He charges at the king, but the king allows him to stab him, saying Sari would be sad if he hurt Ilya. Bennu helps Sari get free, and she immediately checks up on the king, as she starts crying, while Ilya falls to his knees, realizing how he just made her upset. The king claims the wound is nothing to him, and Ilya starts questioning everything he has been doing. But Sari hugs him, telling him he has done so much for her, so he should forgive himself. Bennu heals the king's wound, and he transforms into a phoenix to transport Ilya, but he refuses to accept help from the monsters, choosing to go back alone. Ilya tells the king he has to give up Sari if he makes her cry, and the king gives him his word. Ilya ends up riding with Sari to return to the human kingdom, and Sari teases him for being afraid of heights. Ilya apologizes for acting so selfishly, and although he can never forgive the monsters, he decides to have faith in her belief in the king. He kisses her forehead, telling her he loves her, as they part ways. Sari flies back with the king, who tells her that he hesitated to bring her back because he thought she could be happier with Ilya, but Sari says she just wants to be with him no matter what. Back at the palace, Sari receives news that the Duke Gallius wants to meet her. She is excited to meet the Duke, but Anubis warns her not to take this matter lightly, saying she needs to play hostess to the Duke, and proposing this as one of her ordeals on her path to queenship. Ahmed is surprised to learn about this, and she recognizes Gallius as a legendary general known as the Sea God. She warns Sari that Gallius hates humans, so she advises Sari to be careful. Sari asks the king about Gallius, and he reveals that Gallius is known for his ruthless behavior, but the king assures her that he won't let Gallius harm her. Gallius arrives in the castle, as Anubis gives him a proper welcome, but Gallius tells him to skip the formalities, wanting to see the queen. Sari joins them, introducing herself as the hostess, but Gallius becomes upset, not wanting to accept a human as the queen. His servant tries to calm him down, but Gallius threatens him with his sword. At that moment, the king joins them, saying he won't permit disturbances in the palace, and Gallius bows to him, but he tells the king that he won't accept a human as their queen. The king becomes upset, but Sari tells Gallius that she understands why he feels that way, because they never had a human queen before. She takes them to the courtyard, telling them about its history, but Gallius makes a loud noise, causing her to forget her script. Gallius realizes that she just memorized her lines, so he disparages her, telling her that she disgusts him as he starts walking away. During dinner, Sari leads the toast, but she doesn't drink the wine that Gallius brought with him. Gallius inquires about this, and Anubis explains that beast wine disagrees with her. Gallius tells her that she isn't fit to be queen, saying humans are unreliable, so his servant tries to stop him, but Gallius hits him, saying he can't eat while looking at his ugly face. Gallius states that Sari also makes him lose his appetite, ordering her to leave, so Sari excuses herself, making her way back to the king's quarters. Back in the room, the king gives her his food, revealing that he wasn't able to eat anything because he couldn't stand Gallius's behavior. Sari tells the king not to worry about her, because she's used to being treated that way, saying she can't leave him with a foul temper, so she needs to turn things around at the ball. Sari tells him that she's done eating the food, so she wants him to eat her leftovers, but the king licks her instead, asking her to show them that he was right to choose her. That evening, Sari asks Gallius to dance with her, but he declines, and Anubis informs him that they will cancel the ball if he doesn't dance with Sari. Gallius orders his ugly servant to dance with her instead, and they dance together, as the servant asks Sari to forgive him, thinking his ugly appearance disgusts her. But Sari tells him this isn't the case, saying he appears to be in so much pain. The servant reveals that he received his wounds during the last war, where he was burned by humans. He tells her that war has divided humans and beasts, so she will have a hard time as the queen of the beasts, wondering why she even wants to be their queen. Sari states that she just wants to be with the king, wanting to help him in any way she can. They appear to be enjoying their time together, but Gallius suddenly hits his servant, saying it's not fun watching him befriend a human, and he pulls out his sword. However, Sari gets in the way, as Gallius tells her to move, reminding her that she'll never be the legitimate queen if she fails the ordeal. He gives her a choice, saying she can either make the smart move for her future by moving away, or be destroyed with his ugly servant. Sari chooses to give up her future as queen, and Gallius is surprised by her decision. The servant reminds her about her goal to stay by the king's side, but Sari states that she can't be a queen if she ignores the people who are getting hurt. Sari starts questioning Gallius's identity, saying he bullies people who can't fight back, so she wonders if he's really the legendary sea god. Gallius swings his sword, but the ugly servant stops him, telling him he's done enough. He suddenly bows down, and we learn that the ugly servant is actually the real Gallius, and the shark is his grandson named Jaws. Gallius explains that the king has improved the quality of their lives, but they went to the palace because they heard news that he wants to take a human as his queen. They wanted to test Sari by putting on an act, claiming that the entire deception was his idea, so he begs the king to spare his men from punishment. However, Jaws implores the king to punish him instead of Gallius, because their race can't survive without him. Sari asks the king if they still need to be punished, saying nothing bad happened to her, but the king states that they deserve to be punished. He orders Gallius and his men to swear perpetual allegiance to him, telling them to defend the realm for him. Gallius thanks the king for his mercy, swearing allegiance to the king and his queen, and they sail back to their home. The next day, Anubis tells the king that Sari is now disqualified from queenship because she gave up her future as queen. The king states that she performed her duties well, but Anubis still refuses to consider the ordeal a success. The king returns to his quarters, and Sari notices that something is bothering him, but he doesn't tell her about it, thinking it will make her regret her actions. Anubis reprimands 2 guards for being noisy, and as he walks away, he overhears the guards talking about Sari, thinking humans aren't bad. But Anubis doesn't share their sentiment, thinking Sari tricked the king to save her own skin, so he wants to get rid of her. While walking, he stumbles upon Sari, and he leads her to a nearby library. As she starts searching for a book, Anubis realizes that they're alone in that area, so he thinks about killing her. He is about to do it, but Sari pulls out a book, causing the other books to fall on Anubis. Sari checks up on him, telling him she'll look for the book herself, but Anubis offers to help her out. Sari appears to be oblivious of his intentions, so he wonders if she's stupid, as he thinks about proceeding with his plan, but he suddenly passes out. In a flashback, we see a young Anubis refusing to go to his father's funeral. His servant tells him that he is about to become the successor, but Anubis doesn't want this, because this would make him the royal family's lapdog. We learn that his family has served the royal family for generations, and his father died trying to protect the king from assassins, but none of the royals mourned his death, seeing him as just another pawn. One day, he meets up with the king, who thinks he's too young to assume his father's duties, so he orders Anubis to look after the prince. He formally introduces himself to the prince, and he starts serving him, but Anubis sees the prince as a fool, so he thinks he could take control after the prince succeeds the throne. Anubis falls ill, and he overhears the servants talking about how weak he is, wondering if he will be able to succeed his father. This makes Anubis upset, because he doesn't want to be like his father, as he remembers that his father never visited him when he was sick. At that moment, he feels a presence, and he realizes that the prince is in his room, checking up on him. The prince reveals that no one saw him enter, as he gives him a basket of healthy foods, telling him to eat plenty and get well. Anubis wonders why he's doing this, and the prince reveals that he is worried about him. Anubis is surprised to hear this, because he wasn't expecting the prince to be concerned about his servant. The prince reminds him that his father saved the king, and he is really grateful for this, saying he loves his father. Anubis tells him to leave the room, but suddenly, 2 beasts enter the room, and they are both taken away. Anubis wakes up inside a cave, where the kidnappers thank him for helping them catch the prince. They talk about taking the king's head, and Anubis realizes that they are the assassins who killed his father. Anubis bites one of them, telling him to give his father back, but the assassin pushes him back, and tells him that the members of his family die as the shadows of royalty. They think fate must have brought him to them, because their plan is to kill him and hold the prince hostage. One of them is about to kill him, but the prince protects him, which surprises Anubis. The prince stands against the assassins, as Anubis tells him to stop, but the prince states that it's a king's duty to protect everyone. He thinks that if he can't even protect a friend, then he wouldn't make a good king. The prince unleashes his aura, causing rocks to fall on the assassins, but he suddenly collapses, so Anubis checks up on him. The prince is happy that Anubis is okay, and this causes him to cry, as he starts dragging the prince away, until they are rescued by a search party. Back in his house, his servant tells him that the prince made a plea with the king, telling him not to hold Anubis accountable, because the prince didn't want to tarnish his family's reputation. Anubis realizes that he has found the king he wants to serve, so he visits the prince, apologizing for failing to protect him, and devoting himself to making the prince the best king. Back in the present, Anubis wakes up, and Sari tells him that he collapsed in the library. She is about to touch him, but he slaps her hand away, because he doesn't want to accept her as queen, saying he doesn't trust her. However, Sari doesn't seem to care, telling him that the king is worried about him. She tells him to think about her next ordeal, and she leaves the room. During their next meeting, Anubis states that Sari has succeeded in her ordeal, surprising everyone in the room. He has decided to give Sari a chance, wanting to see if she deserves the king's heart. Sari sees the statues of the first king and his queen consort, and Klops reveals that the first king was the hero who united the beasts. Sari wonders why she hasn't been able to enter this area before, so Klops explains that this is a sacred place, and it's only open during certain occasions like the Grand Consecration. The Grand Consecration is an event where the people gather for a celebration, which the king will lead while wearing the first king's clothes. Sari makes her way to the king, and she sees him trying on the clothes. He orders everyone but Sari to leave the room, and he reveals that a storm is going to drive the miasma away from the realm, so they're going to have another night of revelation. That evening, Sari looks after the king in his human form, as he reveals that he is always nervous before he faces the people, because they might learn about his secret, but he feels better when he's around Sari. The next day, the beasts gather for the grand consecration, but the king is still in his human form, because the miasma still hasn't filled the air. The king knows that he will regain his beast form, but it will take time, and the grand consecration is about to begin. At the venue of the event, Anubis learns that the king is nowhere to be found. He recalls that no king has ever been late for the event, so he orders the servants to look for the king. The servants claim that they have searched all areas, but the judge named Set suggests searching the underground chamber, saying the king must be meditating before the event. They enter the chamber, but they realize that it's empty, and we learn that the king used a secret passage to escape. They sneak past the guards, but they are about to be spotted, so Sari distracts them. Jorman asks her about the king's whereabouts, and she tells him that she's also looking for the king, but she couldn't find him there, so the guards walk away. Sari and the king make their way back to the underground chamber, where the king starts transforming into a beast, but he thinks that he won't be able to make it on time for the grand consecration, so he starts to think that he's not a good king. Sari tells him that he's a great king, and at that moment, the king senses a presence, so Sari leaves the room to buy time for him. She sees Set standing at the entrance, and he tells her that he senses magic in that room. Sari tells him that the king is concentrating, but Set calls her a liar, saying he's concerned about the king's safety, and asking her to open the door. Sari refuses to cooperate, so Set orders a guard to restrain her. As they open the door, they see the king in his beast form, and Set wonders what he's been doing all this time. The bell rings as the grand consecration begins, and Set tells him that he doesn't have enough time to dress up, but the king says he will go without it. At the venue, the beasts wonder why the king isn't there, because the king is always on time for the event. Anubis starts to panic, ordering the servants to cancel the ceremony, but at that moment, they see the king riding Gwibber, and he stands before everyone wearing his usual cloak. The beasts wonder what's going on. He tells the people that he has cast off the first king's armor, saying he respects tradition, but he reminds them about his duty to serve the realm. The king explains that he can't fulfill his duty by following his ancestors' footsteps, so they need to make changes for them to move forward, promising to lead them to a brighter future. The crowd cheers for the king, and Anubis tells him that he made a good speech, but he wonders why the king didn't inform him about his bold plan. The king states that it's because he would have objected, saying Sari gave him the idea for his speech. Anubis admits that he's impressed, and Sari wonders why he still hasn't given her an ordeal. At the conference room, Anubis tells her that he has no ordeals to give her, saying she will now take her place as the acting queen consort. Anubis asks her to perform the queen's public duties, saying that if she can do so without incident until the next grand consecration, she will be recognized as the queen consort in full. Anubis warns her that her public presence will be met with protest, and he will send her back to the human realm if she fails to perform her duties. He gives her an option, saying she could decline the position of acting queen consort, so that they can find a wife for the king, and she can stay in the palace as the king's pet. Sari takes her time to think about this, and Bennu tells her to accept the position, thinking she's the only one who can make the king great. Sari makes up her mind, as Bennu transforms into a phoenix, pushing her to the king's arms. She tells the king that she will take the position of acting queen consort, and the king is happy to hear this, saying he will share responsibilities with her. After some time, envoys arrive from all over the kingdom, wanting to talk to the king about the acting queen consort, but the king orders his servants to turn them away, because Sari still hasn't done anything. Amit visits Sari, as she tries on her new clothes, because Anubis told her that her normal clothes were too shabby for a queen's work. Amit tells her that she's so composed, because the kingdom is in turmoil, but Sari knows that brooding will do nothing, so she's just going to do what she can. As Amit walks around the palace, she overhears royal guards talking about subduing a band of rebels, and this makes her realize that Jorman is undertaking perilous missions. She realizes that both Sari and Jorman are faced with challenging tasks, so she creates charms for both of them, thinking it will give them protection. The next day, Amit overhears Jorman prohibiting a royal guard to march with them, because he knows that the guard has a family. The guard asks Jorman if he will ever marry, but Jorman tells him that he is too focused on his duties, so he has no intention of getting married. Amit gives Sari an amulet, and she notices that Amit is holding onto another one, asking her who it's for. Amit tells her that it's for Jorman, as she shamefully admits that she wants Jorman to notice her. But Sari tells her that it's nothing to be ashamed of, saying they aren't so different, because she feels greedy for wanting to stay with the king despite being human, and she tells Amit that she should also be greedy. Amit rushes to Jorman, and she gives him the amulet, saying she imbued it with charms to protect him during his mission. Jorman accepts it, promising to return from his mission unscathed so that her reputation won't be tarnished, and Sari is happy to see this. While she is walking around the palace, the king tells her that her first duty as acting queen has been decided. They ride a carriage to the vassal state called Sarbal, as the king tells her that the Sarbal's ruler, Ted, and his consort Kaura, have a newborn son named Kalkara. As acting queen consort, she must give Kalkara her blessings, saying Osmargo hasn't had a queen for years, so that task was performed by the priestesses for many years. Meanwhile, Kaura begs Tet to refuse the rite of blessing, because she doesn't want a human to touch her son, but Tet reminds her that they're a vassal state, so they must abide by Osmargo's customs. They arrive at Sarbal, and Tet welcomes the king to their state. Sari introduces herself as the acting queen consort, saying she will give their son her blessings. Kaura gives her a cold stare, saying their son is not feeling well, but he should be ready to receive the blessing tomorrow. During dinner, Sari is treated as a proper guest, but she drops her fork, and she suddenly starts to feel dizzy. The king notices that something's wrong, so he stands up, saying he's tired so he will have to rest early. He brings Sari with him to their room, where Sari reveals that Kaura's actions remind her of her parents, who raised her as a sacrifice, saying she could hardly breathe because of it. The king cuddles her, telling her that he doesn't know what to say, so he just imitated her actions, and this makes her feel better, knowing that the king is at her side. The following day, Sari is about to give Kalkara her blessings, but he suddenly starts crying, so Kaura asks to postpone the blessings. Sari agrees to this, as Anubis notes that Kaura is fond of her only son, so he suspects that she is planning to avoid the rite of blessings at any cost, wondering what Sari will do to fulfill her duty. While outside, Sari offers to soothe Kalkara, but Kaura tells her that she'll take care of it, asking her to have a look around the palace in the meantime, and Kaura's daughter, Tetra, volunteers to show Sari around. After Kaura leaves, Tetra immediately calls Sari ugly, saying that must be why her mother doesn't want Sari to hold Kalkara. Tetra claims that she can help Sari, but she must first become her minion and obey everything she says. Sari plays along, as Tetra turns her into a plaything, but Sari appears to be enjoying it. Tetra orders Sari to be her horse, so she gets down on all fours, telling her to climb aboard. Tetra asks Sari what's wrong with her, thinking she's just doing it to gain Kaura's favor, but Sari doesn't seem to care, saying she was having so much fun that it slipped her mind. Sari starts carrying her around, but Tetra calls her an idiot, as she reveals that Kaura doesn't care about her. Kalkara is the heir that her parents always wanted, so all of her elder sisters were married off, and she knows that the same thing will happen to her in the future, thinking Kaura wants to get rid of her. But Sari disagrees, saying Kaura loves her, but she doesn't know how to show it. Tetra still thinks she's an unwanted child, and she swiftly makes her way to the tallest tower in the palace, planning to take her own life while the king is there. Sari catches up to her, telling her not to do it, as the king watches them, but Tetra sees her life as irrelevant. Sari states that she wants to play with Tetra again, but she remembers how her mother only stopped crying after she gave birth to Kalkara, thinking her birth didn't make a single person happy. She notices that everyone is now staring at her, and this makes her feel good, because her last act is going to make an impact. At that moment, Kaura arrives, and Sari helps Tetra realize that she is only doing this to grab her mother's attention. Tetra takes a step back, and she starts falling, as Sari jumps after her, holding onto her as Gwibber is summoned, saving them from certain death. Sari tells her not to try it again, as she kisses her forehead, saying she is glad that she was born. Hearing this, Tetra starts crying, as she hugs onto Sari. Kaura realizes that she was too busy with Kalkara, so she never had the chance to hug Tetra like that, and Tet apologizes to the king for the unsightly spectacle, but the king tells him to prioritize his daughter instead of placating him. Tetra lands safely, and Kaura immediately hugs her, asking Tetra to forgive her, as she thanks Sari for saving her daughter. They proceed with the rite of blessing, where Kaura allows Sari to bless her son. Anubis still refuses to accept Sari as the queen, but he now recognizes her ability to change others. That evening, we see Sari spending time with Tetra, who reveals that she likes Anubis, thinking they would make a good match, because his blood is stronger, so it will allow her to bear children from his race. We learn that the beast's children take after the parent with the stronger bloodline, and Tetra tells Sari that she will have to bear the king's children in the future, so she needs to become familiar with that concept. As she tries to sleep, the king visits her, telling her that they need to talk. He takes her to a secluded place, and they discuss the king's duty to produce an heir, but he knows that the blood in his veins are different, so he isn't sure if he will be able to love his children, revealing that his parents didn't love him either. In a flashback, we learn that the king was raised with no mother and siblings, and his father treated him harshly, locking him up in a cell during the Night of Revelations. But despite this, he still thought that his father was just raising him to become a fine king. While on his deathbed, his father grabs onto him, telling him that he doesn't want to pass the throne to him, because he has filthy blood in his veins. His father reveals how much he hates him, but he suddenly coughs up blood and passes away. The priests thought that his father wanted to hug him before he died, but this is far from the truth. He later learns that his father was mentally ill, but this illness was never revealed to the public, and to this day, he still doesn't know why his father had a child with a human, but he curses his own blood, saying he doesn't want to pass it to his heirs. Sari starts crying, knowing that the king sees his human blood as a curse, so the king cheers her up, telling her that he wasn't able to choose the blood he was born with, but he chose her, saying her presence is a blessing to him. He promises to protect their future children, telling her that he wants her as his queen, as he kisses her. They leave Sarbal, and the king tells Sari not to push herself too hard, because she has just completed her first task. Back in their palace, the king tells Sari to visit the troops stationed in the city of Magia, but he can't accompany her for this task, so she needs to travel alone. The king explains that he didn't want Sari to go alone, but Anubis told him that he needs to visit his dying friend, and the appointment of Magia's ruler needs to be confirmed in the royal presence. Sari accepts the task, telling the king not to worry, because she can handle it alone. The king visits Sari as she packs her things, and she reveals that she is nervous, saying she isn't used to being away from him, but she needs to prove that she can handle the job on her own, so that she can become a good queen. The king leaves the palace, and Anubis tells Sari that she will need a new guard for her trip. He states that it's time for her to pick a captain for the queen's guard, who will serve as her right-hand man, but nobody volunteered to serve her, because she's human. However, a Hyenian suddenly steps on Anubis, and he volunteers to be the queen's guard, introducing himself as Lanto. Anubis advises Sari to choose her right-hand man carefully, saying Lanto is too rude to be the queen's guard, and suggesting that they should test his skill in combat, but Lanto suddenly slices his mask, threatening to show off his skills on Anubis. Sari stops him, and she accepts him as the captain of the queen's guard. They make their way to Magia, as Lanto tells the driver to change route, claiming there's a shortcut. Sari asks him why he volunteered to be her guard, so he tells her that he just wanted to be promoted to captain, because it's a high rank for a commoner. He knew that it would be easy to get the position, but he still can't believe that he was the only volunteer, thinking he got lucky because she's human. At that moment, they are attacked by a group of sand serpents, and Sari is about to get eaten, but Lanto saves her, easily defeating the monsters. The guards blame Lanto for their encounter with the sand serpents, thinking he deliberately led them there when he ordered them to change route, but Sari stops them, telling them not to fight each other. Lanto wonders if she finds him suspicious, and Sari tells him that she doesn't know him well enough to doubt him. Lanto reveals that the guards were right about him, saying he wanted them to encounter the sand serpents because he wanted to prove himself by defeating them, but he promises to keep Sari alive, knowing he would be in trouble if she dies. Sari chooses to trust Lanto, telling him that he can use her to make a name for himself, but he should never put other people in danger again. Lanto accepts her offer, and they reach the city of Magia, where the soldiers talk about Lanto because he's a Hyenian. Lanto notices this, so he calls them impudent, telling them about his position, and saying that he outranks them. The captain of the troops, Tyrene, orders his men to return to their posts, and tells Sari to address his men at once, because they don't have enough time. Sari appears before the soldiers, introducing herself as the acting queen consort, and telling them that the king has a message for them. She states that their services are needed by the kingdom, so they should be proud of their roles as soldiers, and perform their duties with discipline. She implores everyone to support the king, as she ends her speech. Cyclops thinks she did a good job, but Lanto tells her that she needs to be more authoritative, because she is the highest ranking person in that area. She meets up with the ruler of Magia named Braun, who tells her that they will hold the signing ceremony tomorrow morning. He explains that there is an anti-monarchist insurgency in the land, and the chaos was prolonged because they have no ruler. but the signing ceremony should make the rebels settle down. That evening, we see the soldiers accusing Lanto of being an anti-monarchist because he's a Hyenian. Lanto prepares to take them on, but Sari stops him, asking them what's happening. The soldiers explain that Lanto looks suspicious, telling her that she must not know about the Hyenians, but she defends Lanto, telling them that she knows how the Hyenians betrayed the kingdom in the past, but she thinks it has nothing to do with him. The soldiers apologize for their behavior, but they tell her that they don't trust her. After they leave, Lanto reveals that the last king executed innocent Hyenians, so he wanted to avenge them by destroying the royal family. He warns Sari that he can lie with a straight face, so she shouldn't trust him, but Sari thinks he's incredibly honest, saying he's not the type of person who can fool people with a clear conscience, so she chooses to trust him. Lanto is touched by her words, and the next day, Sari enters his room, but she can't find him there. She hears someone screaming for help, and we learn that Bronn has been attacked by someone. Bronn survives the attack, and he describes his attacker as a hooded man with one eye. He was able to tear out the assailant's fur, but its color is unremarkable. The officials begin to wonder how the attacker entered the building, asking Tyrene to explain what happened. At that moment, a soldier speaks up, saying he can name the culprit. Lanto enters the room, and the soldier immediately accuses him of attacking Bronn. The officials think he fits the description, so they are convinced that he is guilty, as the soldiers surround him. A soldier asks him what he was doing last night, so Lanto tells them that he fell asleep on top of the building, but they see this as a flimsy excuse. The soldiers are ordered to arrest Lanto, so they charge at him, but Sari gets in the way, saying she will prove Lanto's innocence. The soldiers don't trust her, thinking she will frame someone to help Lanto escape, but Tyrene offers to accompany her, as he takes responsibility for what happened. Lanto is detained until he's cleared of suspicion, and they start looking for the culprit. In the dungeon, Klops tells Lanto that Sari believes in him, as Lanto thinks about Sari's strange behavior, because nobody has ever protected him like she did. In a flashback, we learn that the Hyenians are forced to live apart from the other beasts, but even the Hyenians cut Lanto and his mother off, because his father is not from the Hyenian district. His mother is dying of a disease, and Lanto buys medicine for her, using the money he worked so hard to earn. But as he makes his way back, he encounters two soldiers, who accuse him of stealing the medicine. Lanto explains that he bought it, but they won't believe him, and they proceed to confiscate it. He tries to take it back, but the soldiers knock him down, walking away as Lanto begs them to give it back. Because of this, his mother dies, and he gets the idea that rank is important, thinking it's the reason why the soldiers treated him that way. Back in the present, Lanto realizes that he's a liar, because he told Sari not to trust him, but he always wanted someone to believe in him. The next day, Lanto is released from prison, after the culprit has confessed to his crimes. Sari reveals that she used the fur they collected as evidence, and we learn that humans can distinguish colors better than beasts. Sari went around matching the color of the fur with the other beasts, until they were able to find the species that it belonged to. Then they gathered the members of that species, and apprehended the one who behaved suspiciously. A background check reveals that the culprit is an anti-monarchist, and his goal is to prevent the signing ceremony from taking place. They decide to proceed with the ceremony, and Bronn is appointed as the ruler of the city. Sari thanks Tyrene for helping her prove Lanto's innocence, hoping to see him again in the future. However, Tyrene thinks that won't be possible, because his men abandoned their posts, allowing the culprit to enter, and he knows this is a grave failure on his part, so he's going to lose his position as captain. The captain bids her farewell, and Lanto reveals that he just wanted to climb the ranks because he didn't want to be abused by the people in authority, but he is grateful since she believed in him, swearing loyalty to her. They return to Osmargo, where Sari rests after their journey, as Lanto is presented to the king as the captain of the Queen's Guard. The king asks him if he's a Hyenian, so he boldly asks the king if that's a problem, saying he won't stab the king in the back, because he doesn't really care about him. Anubis tells him to watch his tongue, but Lanto states that he doesn't even work for the king, and Anubis is annoyed by his behavior, reminding him of Sari when she first arrived. They start to argue, but the king roars at them, causing Lanto to tremble in fear. He asks Lanto if he is proud of his own blood, and Lanto tells him that he's proud to be a Hyenian, saying he doesn't hate himself for who he is, as he states that Sari is the only one who gets to boss him around, and the king accepts him as the captain of the Queen's Guard, telling him to be her knight. Jormund leads his men against the rebels, saving the villagers from being slaughtered. He returns to the palace, and he reports that there are 0 casualties, but the king notices that there's something wrong with him. As he walks around the palace, he stumbles upon Amit, and he tells her that there is something he wants to tell her, causing her to get flustered. He takes her to a terrace, where he returns the amulet, saying it protected them, but he feels unworthy of it, so he wants her to give it to someone else. Sari learns about this, and she wonders why Jorman returned it. Lanto thinks it's because Jorman no longer needs it, and Amit thinks he's right, but Sari can't accept this, so she makes her way to Jorman. She asks him why he returned it, but Jorman tells her that he can't answer the question. At that moment, Lanto appears, introducing himself as the captain of the Queen's Guard and challenging him to a duel. Lanto wants Jorman to answer Sari's question if he wins, saying he's doing it out of loyalty. The king tells Jorman to accept the challenge, because he wants to see Lanto fight, so Jorman accepts it. As the fight begins, Sari asks the king why he wants them to fight, and the king reveals that he wants to confirm something. Lanto lunges at Jorman, who blocks his attack, kicking him away, and Jorman wins the match. But the king realizes that something's wrong, telling Sari that Jorman is injured. Amit learns about this, so she approaches Jorman, looking at his wound, and giving him an item that will help him recover. Amit thinks this must be the reason why he returned the amulet, so she starts crying, thinking her amulet failed him. Jorman confirms this, saying he didn't want to make her sad, and Amit realizes that Jorman was thinking about her when he returned the amulet, so she tells him that the amulet was the most she could do for him. She knows that he's always risking his life in battle, so she wants him to keep the amulet. Meanwhile, we see Ilya walking through the woods, where he sees mounted beasts holding onto a child. He cuts one of them, causing the child to fall to the ground, as the beasts escape. Ilya checks up on the child, but when he finds that the child is a beast, he points his sword at it, as the child thanks Ilya for saving him. The child introduces himself as Malo, and Ilya sheathes his sword, saying killing a child is a waste of time. He tells Malo to go home, but he doesn't know the way, so Ilya leads him to the border. As they walk, Malo suddenly disappears, and Ilya thinks he got kidnapped again, but he realizes that Malo is just playing around, wanting to play with the flowers. Ilya asks him why the beasts kidnapped him, so Malo tells him about the kids getting kidnapped and sold to humans, who treat them as playthings. Ilya realizes that the beasts he encountered work for humans, and he remembers his first encounter with beasts, making him want to throw up. Malo notices this, so he approaches Ilya, asking him if he's hurt, but he pushes Malo away. Malo reaches out his hand, saying he's trying to rub Ilya without touching him, because his mother does that for him when he gets hurt. An arrow almost hits Malo, as two humans appear, saying the beasts did a terrible job. They reveal that they are working for a noble, and that Malo is their target. They take Malo, as they recognize Ilya as the beast hunter, wondering if he's also after Malo. Ilya says he doesn't care what happens to the child, but he hears Malo screaming for help, and he remembers when his sister was eaten by a beast. So Ilya suddenly stops them, telling them that he hates people who toy with the lives of others. He pulls out his weapon, and charges at one of them, telling Malo to run, but he notices that Ilya is being targeted by the archer, so he gets in the way, causing the archer to miss, because he needs to take Malo alive. Ilya breaks their weapons, telling them to leave if they value their lives, and the men run away. Ilya thinks that Malo will kill humans once he grows up, but he remembers how Sari told him that not all beasts are evil, so he starts to believe that beasts are just like humans. Ilya thanks Malo for watching his back, and they reach the border, where he leaves Malo, bidding him farewell. We see Sari and the king on a ship, as the king reveals that the anti-monarchist groups are no longer active. This was discussed during their recent meeting, and the officials thought this was great news, but Anubis thinks the groups are working together. The king tells Sari to rest easy, because she has no particular duties for their next task. Sari wonders what she should do during her free time, wanting to be a good queen, and the king advises her to follow her heart. At the royal palace, Anubis receives an urgent report that their territory is under attack, so he orders a servant to inform the king with a messenger beast. The king receives the message, and he decides to return to Osmargo, but Sari knows that their current task is also important, so she offers to fill in for him. The king refuses to let her go alone, but Sari tells him that she is just following her heart, saying she wants to help him. The king reluctantly gives her permission, but he tells her not to endanger herself. He places a charm on Sari's ring, and he flies back to Osmargo. A naval patrol encounters an illegal vessel, so they order it to stop, but as they approach it, a beast named Fenrir falls from the sky, killing the patrolman. The beast in the illegal vessel, Nir, joins him in the ship, and we learn that Fenrir was expecting Nir to join him. They ride a flying beast together, as Fenrir thinks about storming the royal palace, wanting to kill the king. They see the royal ship, so they attack it, killing the people aboard. One of the soldiers asks who he is, and Fenrir says he's the new king of the beasts. He reveals that his minions are currently invading Osmargo's territories, saying he will take the throne after he kills the king. The soldiers charge at them, but Nir instantly kills them with flying swords. Fenrir inquires about the highest-ranking individual on the ship, but the soldiers remain silent, so he thinks about executing all of them. However, Sari suddenly approaches him, grabbing his attention. In the royal palace, the king learns that 2 of their territories are under attack, so the king thinks about dividing his forces to deal with them, but Anubis suggests keeping the main force in the capital in case of a sneak attack, as he volunteers to lead a cavalry company to deal with the rebels. Back on the ship, Sari introduces herself as the acting queen of Osmargo, telling Fenrir to take her and spare everyone else. Fenrir thinks she's worthless because she's human, but Sari tells him that the king loves her, saying her appearance doesn't matter. Fenrir thinks she's lying, but Nir tells him that Sari had guards protecting her in Magia, so Fenrir decides to take Sari as his sacrifice. Lanto suddenly stops them, as he lunges at them, dodging Nir's flying sword. However, it turns around, and Lanto learns that Nir can use magic to control his swords. Lanto ends up getting stabbed, and Nir is about to finish him off, but Sari stops him, reminding them that she will only go with them if they don't hurt others. Fenrir orders Nir to spare Lanto, who wants to die for Sari, but she orders him to return to the palace and obey the king. She orders Bennu to heal the others, and she tells her watchers to deliver a message to the king before she leaves with Fenrir. The civilians learn about the invasion, so they gather at the palace gates in a state of panic. Klops rides a messenger beast to return to the palace, and he informs them about the situation. The king wants to save Sari, but Anubis stops him, telling him that he needs to stay in the palace, as he suggests sending a search party. But the king knows that Fenrir has a grudge against him, so he doesn't know what Fenrir will do to Sari. Anubis tells the king to kill him if he insists on going, because his actions are dangerous for the kingdom, and he doesn't want to serve another king. The king calms down and returns to his throne. Klops delivers Sari's message, telling the king not to rescue her, and the king realizes that Sari wants him to defend the people. The king addresses the civilians, confirming that an invasion is taking place, but he tells them not to panic, as he claims he will protect them. He thinks about Fenrir, planning to track him down before he enters the palace, and he is prepared to fight to the death in order to win Sari back and protect his kingdom. The king receives a report, and he learns that the invaders are actually the anti-monarchists that have grouped up, and they are revealed to serve Fenrir. Meanwhile, we see Lanto as he follows after Bennu to look for Sari, but Bennu notes that he can no longer sense her, so she must be in a place with a barrier around it. We see Sari at Fenrir's base, and she asks him why he wants to be king. Fenrir reveals he was the prince of one of Osmargo's vassal states. He was considered a failure compared to his brothers, but he gets a chance to fight against the prince and prove his worth. He prepares to attack with blue flames, but the prince easily overpowers him in an instant. The prince claims he doesn't like fighting, saying they should be friends, but Fenrir thinks he's being mocked. He gets one of his ears cut off, and gets stripped of his title and gets cast away. Sari thinks he must have a grudge against the king, but Fenrir says it was a fair fight, but he wants a rematch so he can regain his pride, and he plans to return beasts to their natural order, where the strong stand at the top, so he even wants to tear down the border and take over the humans. Sari thinks that if he can only feel strong by hurting others, it's because he is weak, and she says he has no chance against the king. Fenrir gets pissed off, unleashing his flames. Sari is protected by her ring, but she ends up passing out, and Fenrir becomes even more interested, seeing she has the king's protection. We see Anubis as he arrives in the city of Khotan to deal with some of the invaders, but he suddenly comes across Nir. Nir recognizes his value and tries to convince him to change sides, saying they share the same ancestors, so he should serve a wolf king instead of a beast, but Anubis refuses, saying he chose the king that he serves, so Nir ends up stabbing him instead. Meanwhile, Fenrir offers Sari all kinds of food, and even jewelry to try to win her over, but she turns it all down. Fenrir wonders what the king is giving her, and she says it's his heart. Fenrir wishes she could be more like Nir, calling him his lovable slave, and we flash back to when Nir was just a pup. He gets whipped for stealing food, but Fenrir ends up taking him in on a whim. Fenrir is happy to have his first servant, giving him his name, and he says they are now together forever. Nir doesn't want to kill for no reason, and he gives Anubis another chance, but Anubis still refuses. Nier is about to finish him off, but Jormungand suddenly arrives. He fights off Nier's swords, and Anubis wonders why he's there, because he should be protecting the king, but he says that the king sent him, wanting to protect his friend. Jormungand narrowly dodges the blades and he rushes at Nier. The blades are about to stab him from behind, but he manages to slash Nier first. Nier retreats on his flying beast, saying he can't afford to die yet, and Anubis thinks they'll be able to find Fenrir's base if they follow him. We see Lanto has managed to find the base, but as he looks for Sari, Fenrir suddenly appears. Sari tries to get free, but Sai and Benyu manage to find her. Benyu sets her free, and he tells her their plan is to get away while their decoy distracts Fenrir, but Sari demands to go back, not wanting to let Lanto die. Lanto is no match for Fenrir, but he claims he is her guard captain, so he's willing to die for her. Sari suddenly appears, dragging him away, and she refuses to let him die. Sari claims that guards aren't there to die for their masters, and she wants him to be there when she becomes a true queen. Benyu makes it through the barrier, and Lanto catches them as they fall, but he ends up collapsing from the impact. Sai sends a message to Klops, and he tells the king that Fenrir's base has been located. Sari carries Lanto away, but Fenrir catches up to them. He wonders what she can do, telling her to submit to him, but Lanto suddenly stabs his leg, as he jumps away with Sari. Fenrir gets pissed off, jumping after them, but they are saved by Gwibber, and the king makes his appearance. Fenrir gets excited to have his rematch, and the king prepares to take him on. Anubis and Jormungand are rushing there as well, but Nier gets in their way, telling them not to interrupt the fight, saying he will stop them by any means necessary, and Jormungand knows there's nothing they could do anyway. The king unleashes his power, clashing against Fenrir, but it ends with both parties taking some damage. Fenrir wonders if that's all he's got, as he goes further beyond, unleashing a huge blast that levels the area. The king is brought to his knees, and Fenrir knows he isn't at full strength because he put his power into Sari's ring. Fenrir charges up the rest of his power, unleashing another explosion, but the king is unharmed. The king wonders what he's doing, and Fenrir says he doesn't want to win because he had an advantage, saying they are now on equal footing, and he prepares to settle things as primal beasts. They start fighting with their claws, tearing each other apart. Fenrir bites the king's head, but the king jumps up and slams him down. The king bites down on his neck, and Jormungand thinks it's over, but Fenrir manages to push him away. Fenrir bleeds profusely, but he refuses to give up. The king can see his determination, and he thinks about himself, about how he curses his own existence and is merely clinging to the throne. He doubts his resolve, and Fenrir lands an attack on him. The king falls to the ground as Fenrir celebrates, and the king feels he is out of strength, but Sari suddenly calls out his name, Lanhart, and he is reminded that it means brave-hearted. He manages to get back up, letting out a ferocious roar, and Fenrir wonders how he can still stand, but he realizes it's because of Sari. Nier can sense Fenrir is afraid, and he thinks back to when Fenrir had his ear cut off. Nier brings him some water, but Fenrir smashes it, saying he's now just a stray dog. Nier prepares to cut his own ear off, but Fenrir stops him, wondering what he's doing. Nier says he wanted to give him his own ear, begging Fenrir to let him stay by his side, because he was the one who gave him a place to belong. Fenrir declares that one day, he will reclaim his pride and become king. Nier reminds him of his pride, and he clashes with the king once more. They both refuse to lose, but in the end, the king is victorious. Sari jumps into the king's arms, and he tells her it's all over, but she tells him not to ever worry her like that again. The king falls from exhaustion, but Fenrir gets back up once again. Sari tries to stop the king from fighting, but he is determined to protect his people and preserve the future of Osmargo. As he brings out his claws to finish off Fenrir, Nier suddenly stabs Fenrir in the back, saying his mission and reason to live is complete. Nier escapes with Fenrir's body, while saying something to the king, who collapses from exhaustion, as everyone rushes to his aid. They rush back to the palace, where Anubis gathers all the priests to tend to the king. Sari watches unworried, as they take him away, while Amma comforts her, and Nier is named a wanted man throughout the kingdom. A few days later, Jormungand trains with Lanto, and he notes how Lanto's outlook has changed. Lanto says it was thanks to Sari who helped him realize his role, and Jormungand acknowledges him as the captain of the Queen's Guard, hoping to spar again when he gets better. Sari goes to visit the king, who she finds is back in his human form due to his weakened state. She tells him how Anubis has warned everyone to stay alert in case Ner tries to take revenge, but the king doubts they will ever see him again. Sari asks him what they talked about when Ner left, and the king reveals that he asked Ner if he hated him for striking down his lord. But Ner thinks that the fight was Fenrir's dream and his curse, so he thanked the king for freeing his master. We see Ner with Fenrir's body on a tall rock, and we learn that Fenrir ordered Ner to take his life if he was defeated. Ner reminisces about his time with Fenrir, thinking about how he was his pride and reason for living, so he jumps off to continue being with him. Meanwhile, we see Set searching the Forbidden Archives, looking for something that will help him overthrow the king. Anubis reports to the king, informing him there were no disturbances found in the kingdom, and that everyone in the palace is preparing for a triumphal procession ceremony that will happen in 2 days to celebrate his victory against Fenrir. Anubis advises him not to keep Sari around during this ceremony, as the citizens might disapprove if they learned that the king was nearly killed trying to save a human. Sari and Amit enjoy desserts that Amit baked to celebrate the king's recovery, while Lanto trains by the statue. Amit notices that Sari's ring is missing, and she tells her that it broke during the battle, which makes Amit sad as she knows it was a gift from the king. Lanto comes in, saying that Sari will receive much finer gifts once she is the queen for real, but Amit explains that any small gift from a beloved is special. They encourage Sari to ask the king to give her another gift as a replacement for the ring. Later at night, Sari asks him about the ring, and the king tells her she will no longer need one since she has built up a tolerance to the miasma. Sari asks him if he remembers what she said to him when he gifted her the ring, thinking he has forgotten. The king instead tells her he wants to show her something, and they both ride over to a rock, where the king uses his magic to reveal a tree. He takes her inside to a clear blue spring, and explains that the ambrosia he used in her ring only takes seed here, which is why the spring is untainted by any miasma. The king explains how the skies in Osmargo used to be a clear blue before the miasma spread across the land, and tells her that only high-ranking individuals and priests are allowed to enter the area. Sari wonders if she should be there, and the king tells her he always planned to bring her here, since the spring's clear blue water reminds him of her eyes. He asks her to show her left hand, and puts a new ring on it since Sari had told him it holds a special meaning in the human world. Sari is happy that he remembered her words, but the king tells her his gift isn't complete. He makes her step aside, and uses his magic to empower the ring with the clear spring water. The king tells Sari that the last ring was only a tool to keep her safe, while her new ring is proof that they will never be apart. The two embrace and the king asks her to stand beside him at the ceremony as his lawful queen-to-be, but Sari declines his request, saying that it will cause discomfort and uproar among the people. The king insists that he will silence anyone who speaks against them, but Sari tells him to not disregard the voices of the people. She thanks him for his offer and promises to become a queen worthy of him. At the ceremony, Sari watches happily as the king is cheered on by his people. At night, the king tries to comfort Sari as a thunderstorm brews outside. Sari asks him to tell her a story. He starts telling her about his mother, who he thought was the late queen, who died around the time he was born. As a kid, the king never knew his mother, and always wondered where he came from, and whether his father, who loathed other species, even loved his mother. He would think about whether his true mother loved him or not, and if she even wished to give birth to him at all. Sari thanks him for telling her about himself, comparing his parents to her estranged ones. She says that even if no one wanted them to be born, it doesn't matter since they are already here, and now have the chance to desire and be desired, which is more important. The king considers her words, and agrees that the past doesn't matter as much as the present and the future. He tells Sari that he plans to abolish the sacrifices and develop good relations with Joanna. He believes that newer generations will welcome the idea of having good relations with humans, but sending beasts as emissaries would be risky since humans would attack them, so Sari volunteers to be his emissary since she is a human. The king proposes this idea to his council, which is met with opposition. Lanto cuts in, saying that the younger beasts haven't seen enough humans to hate them, and that he will accompany Sari to the human realm as her queen's guard. They go outside, and the king informs her that Anubis wishes to speak with her privately. Anubis asks her if she believes they can forge relations with humans, but gets frustrated at her attitude. Sari points out that if someone like Anubis could learn to hate her as a person rather than as a human, then others could do it too. She tells him she will do anything if it helps the king, and Anubis agrees to their proposal after seeing her dedication. She happily informs the king, who says he will send her Queen's Guard with her to protect her. She protests against the idea since it defeats the purpose, but Benyu jumps in, saying he will accompany her since he is neither a beast nor a human, and the king agrees. The next day, Sari prepares to leave for the human realm, while Amit and Lanto wish for her safety. Lanto notices that the king isn't present to wish her farewell, but Sari assures him that they already said their goodbyes. Meanwhile, Set is determined to find the secret behind the king's birth, since exposing it will help him achieve his goals. Sari arrives in Mascavana, the biggest kingdom in Joanna, where a peddler tries to sell a shawl to her. But the man goes away when Ocelot, the acting commander of the kingdom's knights, confronts him. He introduces himself to Sari, and tries to guide her to the churches, assuming she's a pilgrim. Sari informs him that she wishes for an audience with the king, and Ocelot tells her he will hear her out. She innocently tells him about her mission and gets arrested immediately, but she hopes that Ocelot will deliver her letter to the king once he finds out it's real. At night, Ocelot comes to inform Sari that they have confirmed her identity as the most recent sacrifice, which proves that she traveled from the beast realm, but they can't deliver the letter to the king since its contents are in beast script. He tells her of a woman who studies beast script independently, who could translate it. Sari agrees to get her to confirm the contents of her letter, and Ocelot promises to deliver the letter to the king if she succeeds. Sari travels to where the woman lives, and learns that the locals call her the Witch of Shed Eye. They lead Sari to her house, where she is attacked by a woman who looks like the king in his human form. Benyu saves her, and the woman asks her why she is here. Sari explains her situation to the woman, and asks her for help, but the woman refuses, saying she wants nothing to do with beasts. She tells Sari to go away, and threatens to kill her if she bothers her again. Inside her house, we see that the woman is confused by Sari's words. Sari camps outside her house, determined to get answers out of the woman and to find out why she looks a lot like the king. The next morning, Sari greets her again and follows her around, much to her annoyance. Sari doesn't give up, and approaches her again when she's watering flowers, which Sari recognizes as Edelweiss. The woman dismisses her, asking her why she cares about a witch growing flowers. It suddenly starts raining, and two men approach the field to stomp on the flowers. Sari sees them and tells them to stop, but they insist that the flowers are poison that the witch uses to kill villagers. Sari tells them that the flowers are not poisonous, but the men tell her that the witch's blood is cursed and continues stomping the flowers. Sari grabs one of their legs to stop them, and they try to attack her, thinking she is the witch's minion. But Sari is saved by the woman, who attacks the men and warns them to stay out of her garden. They run away as soon as they see her, and Sari thanks her for saving her, but the woman tells her she only did it to protect her flowers. She asks Sari why she went this far to protect her flowers, and she explains that the Edelweiss flowers represent precious memories, which she thinks the woman is growing to remind herself of something she cares about. We see a flashback of the woman in the field, being given flowers by a younger Ocelot, who promises to reach a high position to prove she isn't a witch, only to be rejected by her. The woman tells Sari that she didn't know the flowers had any meaning, and only grew them because of her old friend. She agrees to hear out Sari's request, but says she won't make any promises. Sari suddenly gets dizzy, so the woman takes her home to take care of her. Sari thanks her and calls her Asya, which was the nickname Ocelot gave her as a kid. Asya gets flustered upon hearing that, and tells Sari to go to sleep. She wakes up late at night to find Asya studying books by the candlelight. She goes over to see what she's reading and is surprised to find out it's a book in beast script. Sari tells her she came to find her because of her ability to understand beast script, and asks her what the book is about. Asya explains it's a diary written by her ancestor who wrote it in beast script so no one would read it. We learn that generations ago, one of Asya's ancestors had a child with a beast despite it being taboo, and it tarnished the reputation of her entire lineage. Sari asks Asya if she has beast blood, but Asya doesn't know and tells her that the ancestor's fate remains a mystery. She gives the diary to Sari, who tells her it might contain information on her beloved king's mother. Asya doesn't understand her feelings for a beast, but agrees to go to the palace to decipher the letter to the human king. Anubis confronts Set for sneaking into the forbidden archive, and tells him he's committing treason. Set remains calm and claims that he can enter the archive since he is of royal blood. He then makes Anubis question his loyalties to the king, implying that the king might not be who he thinks he is. Anubis thinks about Set's request to help him expose the king's secret, and he feels conflicted. In the human realm, Ocelot praises Sari for succeeding in her task and reunites with Ossia. Sari asks how they know each other, and he reveals that they are from the same village. Ossia thinks he left because she was cold to him, but he assures her that he went to the capital to get stronger, so he could come back to protect her. He proudly tells Ossia he has grown stronger, but she tells him he still looks the same. Ossia begins translating the letter, and Ocelot takes it to the king so they can be granted an audience. Sari seems nervous about meeting the king, and Ossia tells her to be more assertive and hold her head high during the audience. She enters the throne room, and the king tells her he will organize a global council with representatives from other nations to discuss the king's proposal in 7 days, and requests her to inform the king that they wish for more time. He asks her about the beast realm, since countless maidens from poor families were sent in the past as sacrifices, which he doesn't agree with. Sari tells him it is an ordinary place where people fret over little things just like humans, and that there are both good and bad people in that world, with a king who wishes for peace between humans and beasts. The king considers this and dismisses her. Ocelot tells Sari he was impressed by her forthright nature, and was surprised to learn that his king thought of the sacrifices that way, since he never showed weakness in public, which Sari thinks is similar to the king. Ocelot talks about how he is hopeful that a future where humans and beasts could live in peace is no longer a dream, thanks to Sari, which she is happy to hear. Meanwhile, Anubis prepares to deliver an anonymous proposal from Set to the king, but he hesitates, scared to learn the truth. He builds up his courage, convincing himself that Set is wrong, and knocks on the king's door. The king tells him to meet him another time unless it's urgent, and Anubis tells him he would prefer to discuss it face to face. We learn that Set told Anubis that if the king denies him entry, he must be trying to hide himself. Anubis requests the king to show himself, which he reluctantly does, revealing himself in his beast form. Anubis is relieved to see him in his beast form, and asks to discuss the negotiations between Joanna and Sari. Sari prepares to leave for home after finishing her duty, and Ocelot suggests she should stay to hear the council's decision, but Ossia scolds him for being insensitive. Sari asks Ossia about her reason for wanting to study beast script, when she only suffered because of them. She tells her she wanted to learn about herself, but it doesn't matter to her anymore since Ocelot accepts her for who she is. Sari is moved by her words, and departs thinking about how she wishes for Lanhart to feel accepted by others. They reach the beast realm and her arrival is announced by the border guards, but Bennu throws Sari into the king's arms when he sees him waiting by the window. The two embrace, but their moment is short-lived, as Anubis calls for a royal council immediately upon her arrival. Sari informs the council about her mission in the human realm, which they discuss. She feels restless because of the diary, and wants to show the king, but she notices he is acting strange. Anubis asks for approval to publicly announce the peace talks with Joanna and Sari's role in them, which the king approves. Sari is hesitant about it, but Anubis tells her that if the talks go smoothly, he will acknowledge her as the lawful queen-to-be. Amet, Sai, and Klops are shocked to hear this news, but Lanto tells them it will only be possible if Sari passes the last test, which is to successfully create good relations with Joanna. Lanto doubts that Anubis would ever accept her, but Amet is positive that he might have had a change of heart despite his strict demeanor. The others don't agree with her, and Lanto tells them that he feels something suspicious is going on in the palace. Anubis informs the king about the messenger birds returning after delivering messages of the proclamation to the entire realm. He advises the king to convene a council as soon as possible after the proclamation. The king considers all of this, but says nothing. Sari rushes over to him, asking him to take her out since she is bored, and he agrees immediately. He tells Anubis he has done everything he can for the preparations, and departs with Sari. Sari apologizes for interrupting him, but he knows she wants to talk to him without the others knowing, revealing that he wants to speak with her secretly as well. He takes her to a dark cave, and lights it up with magic, explaining that the minerals in the rocks respond to strong magic, and are a sign of might among beasts. Sari likens the glowing rocks to stars, but the king says he has never seen a starry sky, since they only appear on nights of revelations when he conceals himself. Sari promises to take him out to see the stars, once he can openly show his human form to the public without being condemned. The king talks about the importance of the proclamation for his future, and Sari encourages him, assuring him that she will be with him no matter what happens. On the day of the proclamation, everyone is tense, and Anubis is nervous because Set told him he would not be present at the council for personal reasons. The king goes out and announces their plans for peace with Joanna. This causes murmurs among the people, but the king continues his speech only to be interrupted by Set, who casts a spell that clears up the miasma and causes the king to turn into his human form. Everyone is shocked to see the king as a human, and Sari uses this moment of confusion to quickly escape with him, while Lanto throws Sai at Sari. Anubis confronts Set, accusing him of using sealed tomes from the archives to learn sinister magic to trap the king in a human form. Set is amused by his reasoning, and reveals that he only cleared up the miasma temporarily, to recreate the effects of a night of revelation. He reminds Anubis that the king always hides away during that time, and his human form is the reason why, which leaves him speechless. Lanto hurries away while Klops yells at him for throwing Sai away. Lanto explains that the link between them will help them follow Sari, but he is stopped by guards. Jorman orders the guards to stand down, but they explain that they are only following Set's orders. Set comes out to declare himself as the acting king, and announces a state of emergency, saying that Anubis appointed him to this duty, due to his accurate understanding of the situation. Set confirms that what they saw was the king's true form, and that there is no record of his lineage, putting the king's status as royalty into question. He calls the king a fake and accuses him of plotting against the beasts, ordering the kingdom to seize him and Sari as criminals. Sari takes the king to a cave, where she tries to comfort him. She takes his cloak and goes outside to see the clear sky, which Benny deduces is an artificial effect. Sari goes to a nearby town to search for food, but sees a sorting squad dividing citizens up between the high-class mammals and non-mammals according to the new class system decreed by the acting king. The citizens protest, but are shut down by the leader of the squad, who tells them that the king only preached equality to hide his mixed blood. Disagreements among the citizens cause unrest. We see a baby try to go back to his mother, but is attacked by a guard. Sari jumps in to shield the baby, and questions why they are acting like this. She tells them that the king always worked hard for them, and is frustrated by their attitude. The sorting squad dismisses her comments, and declares he will execute her, but Lanto comes in to defeat him. The child's mother quickly takes her child from Sari, and the other villagers look at her with contempt. Lanto takes her away from the village, and tells her about the new acting king. The two realize that he had the whole thing set up from the start, as Lanto tells her about his claims, that he is royal blood, making him the rightful heir. Jorman opposes Set's claims, but he shows him the records stamped by an archpriest, that proves he was born to a concubine of the late king. Jorman asks Anubis if he serves Set, but he says that he only serves the true king. This angers Jorman, who punches him, and declares that Leonhard is his only true king. Set says he expected this reaction from him, and seizes him for being a rebel. Sari is shocked to learn of these developments, as Lanto expresses his concerns about a civil war breaking out, due to Set's supremacist beliefs. Sari asks Lanto what he thinks about Leonhard, but he says he serves her, and whoever she chooses is his king, while both Sai and Klops agree with him. Their support moves Sari, and she is determined to put Leonhard back on the throne, but she wishes to confirm his roots before they take action. She goes back to the cave, to inform the king of Set's rule and encourages him to discover his roots, and take back the throne before the kingdom falls apart. He tells her that bloodlines don't matter to him anymore, as he can't protect the kingdom, and asks her to go to Joanna with him where they will be accepted. In prison, Jorman gets mocked by a guard for being a reptilian, but Amit knocks him unconscious, and helps Jorman escape. She requests him to take her with him to find the king and Sari, and Jorman swears to protect her as they run off. Meanwhile, Sari tells the king he will regret leaving the kingdom, telling him to stay and protect it with her. This makes him realize he was about to make a mistake again, and he decides to no longer hide himself so he can lead his kingdom. Sari notices he is scared and comforts him, and the two share a kiss. Amit worries for their safety, which Jorman finds admirable. She tells him that she doesn't worry for Sari because she's her friend, but that she is her friend because she worries for her. Jorman says he feels the same way about the king, who we see supported his dreams of being a royal guard in his youth due to his talents, and promised to change the kingdom so that reptiles would have equal opportunities. Amit is happy to hear about his past, and notices a petal fall near her feet. She remembers her conversation with Sari about fortunes told with that flower coming true, and realizes that she might be nearby. We see Sari plucking out the flower's petals as Lanto gathers firewood. They notice rustling in nearby bushes, which turns out to be Jorman and Amit, who Sari is happy to see. They go to the king and make plans to retrieve the diary to learn about his roots. Lanto points out that it would be easier if the sky returned to normal and the king was in his beast form, but the king believes that the people must willingly accept him in his current form, or else he should leave. Sari and Lanto follow an underground passageway to get to the castle, where Sari's ring detects another creature, which they find chained up. Sari asks Bennu to heal its wounds, but Bennu isn't able to help her since he senses the creature is dead, and is under a spell that prevents him from passing on. The creature speaks to her, asking why she has the king's magic on her, and senses that she was chosen by him. Lanto can't hear the creature, and it explains that it's only speaking in Sari's mind. It reveals that it was the former archpriest who guarded the king's secret for a century, the second most powerful man in the kingdom. Sari asks him why he ended up here, and he explains that he enchanted himself and went into hiding so that he would never reveal the secret of the king's birth. But Set discovered him and coerced the information out of him. Sari tries to free him, but he instead uses the power to entrust her with the secret of the king's birth. Meanwhile, the king and Jorman fight their way back into the palace, where the king is determined to fight, despite being weak in his human form. Set confronts them and traps them in a magical barrier, proclaiming Lanhart as the false king and forbidding him from using violence. We learn that the late queen died without birthing an heir, which forced the late king to request the archpriest to search for his exiled brother. The late king's brother was his twin, but he was driven out of the palace at birth, because he was the weaker of the two. The archpriest searched for him, and found out he had fled to Joanna, where he had Lanhart. The brother had already died, so the archpriest stole the baby from its mother, and took it back to the kingdom. Lanhart's birth was announced to the kingdom alongside the death of the queen, posing him as the child she had birthed before dying, but the late king was unable to accept Lanhart's human blood, and died soon after. Sari promises to prove the king's royal blood to the kingdom, but the archpriest tells her he has another secret that will help save the king. He imparts the secret to her and disappears, breaking his spell of undying and passing on to the afterlife. We see Set declaring the king and Jorman as rebels sentenced to death, and attempting to execute them on the spot. He senses the archpriest's spell being broken, and tells Anubis to search the palace for Sari. The king realizes she is in danger, and attempts to charge at Set, but he easily captures him. Set is surprised that the king was able to break through his restraints, showing his intense feelings for Sari, and he promises to send them to the grave together. He chains the king to a tower, where he sees the destruction taking place in his kingdom, and he tells the king about his plans to divide the kingdom into classes. Lanhart tells him that his kingdom was meant to be a place where everyone could live peacefully without being ostracized, and that he is the king until he stops Set. We see Set's childhood, where his mother would apologize to him for not birthing him to look like the king. They would watch from the corner as Lanhart stood beside the king, building on his envy. Sari and Lanto attempt to infiltrate the castle, but are stopped by Anubis, who weakens Lanto and Bennu with magic. Lanto expresses his disappointment at Anubis for abandoning the king and being another supremacist. Anubis orders the guards to take Lanto and Bennu away, while he confronts Sari, who tells him she will stay with the king and reveal the details of his birth. Anubis is annoyed at her for being unbothered by the king's human form, and asks her how long she has known. She tells him about the first night of revelation, and Anubis feels hurt for being fooled by the king from the beginning. He asks Sari if she would still love him if he was purely a beast with no human side, and she tells him she doesn't know. Set continues to torture and mock the king for being a weak human, while he struggles against his restraints. Anubis orders Set to stop, and we see he has an unconscious Sari with him. Set tells him to execute her himself, since they fooled him and trampled on his pride, but Anubis remembers her saying she loves him as the kind king who has both beast and human blood. Anubis stabs Set's hand, and reveals that he never accepted Set as the king, and only serves Lanhart. Set becomes enraged, and he attacks Anubis, leaving him unconscious, but before he can kill him, he is stopped by Gallius and his men, who vow to protect the king. Lanto escapes from the guards, and Amit comes in to help free him of his restraints, telling him they need to find something to help the king. Gallius and his comrades fight off the palace guards, and we see that the kingdom of Mascavana takes in the reptilians who were kicked out of their land. A guard from the sorting squad attempts to attack the refugees, but is stopped by Elia. Meanwhile, a messenger urgently rushes to Set to convey a message from the kingdom of Sarbal, who stand by Lanhart and reject Set's regime despite being high-class citizens under it, because the Sarbal king wants the world to be a place where species don't determine one's standing. The other kingdoms also declared that if the king of Osmargo doesn't resume his reign, they will fight for his cause. Amit and Lanto find the magic circle that Set used to clear the miasma, but finds it tricky to remove. Amit realizes the circle was created by a blood pact and offers her blood to remove its effects. Set is frustrated at the kingdom's response and belittles them for moral posturing. Sari tells him they aren't posturing because they truly understand what the king stood for. She tells him that no one would accept him as king if he didn't listen to the voices of the people. Set attacks Sari in response, and the king jumps after her to save her, just as the spell is lifted and he turns back to his beast form. The king sets Sari down and prepares to fight Set, who still rejects him even in his beast form. He attacks the king fiercely, but it doesn't affect him, due to the king's magic being stronger. The king grabs him and tells him that his obsession with species has hurt too many people and that he will make him pay for his crimes. He punishes Set, and everyone marvels at his powers, but Lanhart tells them that the power a king wields should come from the strength to protect those who live in this realm, rather than the royal bloodline. Set is frustrated by his words, because his mother suffered due to birthing a child that didn't look like the king. He reveals that he found a codex that only people with royal blood can use, and activates the stone that the archpriest gave to Sari. The stone starts speaking in the priest's voice, and reveals that the secret he was guarding above all else was the fact that the late king was incapable of siring children. He had many concubines, but none of them conceived a child, which forced him to take in his brother's child as his own. To further conceal this fact, the late king falsely claimed the child of one of his concubines as his own, making the archpriest sign his birth as a witness, and the mother believed the false claim. Set remains in denial, and prepares to use more magic to attack the king. The king warns him to stop, but before he is able to, he reaches his limit and falls to the ground. The king explains that the forbidden spells use immense magical power that Set's blood couldn't bear. Set is devastated to learn that his whole life was a lie, but Sari comforts him, saying that he is better off without the things that make him suffer, and that his birth itself gives him enough meaning in life. Her words move Set, and he realizes what he sought the whole time was his mother's love. The king visits Anubis, who is ashamed of his actions, and says that he will leave the realm once his wounds heal. He admits that Sari made him strong and guided him to be a good king, but the king tells him that all of that was made possible because of him, who made him a strong king before he met Sari. He tells him he valued his opinion enough to wait until he approved Sari as queen, because he wants his first friend to accept her. Anubis is moved to tears by his words, thinking about his childhood with the king, and the king asks him to continue to serve him. Lanto is shocked to learn that Jorman knew Anubis hadn't turned into a traitor, but he punched him to convince Set that Anubis was on his side. They plan to take care of the sorting squads, and Lanto asks him to continue training him. Sari takes the king to the place where she hid the diary, and offers it to him. They learn that his mother met his father in a forest, where he was wounded in battle. The king's father didn't wish to fight anyone, and only wanted to live a life of love, so his mother promised to love him, since she was also an outcast because people called her a witch due to her red eyes. His mother wished for him to grow up and love someone with all his heart, naming him Richard after the legendary King Lanhart. The king finally feels that he truly understands himself, and he vows to face everyone as himself. The people wait outside for the king to address them, while Amit worries that it's too early to hold the ceremony again. Lanto tells her to worry about herself, and asks her why she didn't let Benya heal her scar. We see that she told Jorman her scar was a badge of honor, and he calls it the most beautiful hand he knows, making the scar special to her. The king comes out to address the kingdom, and proudly admits he's half human, saying that his efforts to mend relations with Joanna were because he learned to love Sari, who made him strong and faced everyone as people, rather than as beasts or humans. He reveals Sari as the lawful queen, and vows to defend Osmargo with his dying breath, requesting his kingdom to pledge their futures to him. The crowd cheers for him and Sari, accepting them as their rulers. A few days later, the king and Sari get married, and Sari tells him how she truly feels. She tells him she was scared, when she learned about the sacrifices, but her life was changed after meeting him, who chose her and allowed her to face her destiny. She asks him to stay with her forever, and the two share a kiss, while the kingdom cheers them on. Years later, we see Sai and Klops running after their son Prince Richard, who has escaped, and we see that he can transform freely between his human and beast form. Ahmet comments on his liveliness, and Jorman points out how the king wasn't able to be this childish, and that he hopes their child will be able to be as lively, which makes both get flustered. Lanto catches Richard, and takes him back to his lessons with Anubis. He finds it boring, but Anubis tells him he needs to learn about history and culture so he can guide others as a king like his parents. Richard is intrigued by this, so he asks Anubis to teach him about his parents, and Anubis starts to tell him about their story. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.